Walked nicely.
Every time I found one of those damned yellow sticky notes on my monitor, I knew it would be a bad day. My secret admirer had that effect on me. The note started out kind of charming. A few polite compliments about my clothing. A note about how kind and gentle my personality was. Little XOXO signatures at the bottom. Middle school crush style. It was a bit of an ego boost, but I was happily married. My wife Emily and I had a rough stretch a few years back after I had an affair, but we got things back on track. I thought of telling her about the notes, but I didn't want to worry her. The flirtatious post-its went into the trash, and I moved on with my day. I didn't give the first dozen or so much thought, until they began to threaten me. The first note that left me with an unsettling feeling showed up 2 months after the first one. Gone were the free-flowing, delicate curves of the handwriting. Heavy grooves gouged into the paper from the heavy block letters etched on the surface. Why don't you answer me back? You could leave a note for me on your computer. It seems like you don't care. It's starting to make me angry. XOXO. At first, I laughed it off before wadding up the note and tossing it in the trash. The idea of leaving a note for my admirer was ridiculous. They had never even mentioned wanting me to leave a reply before. How the hell was I supposed to know my computer monitor was like their own personal mailbox? 2 days later, when I arrived to work, there were 2 notes attached to my monitor. The first one was the angry message from a few days before. It had been uncrumpled and smoothed out. Underneath sat another note on clean, uncrinkled yellow paper. You just wad up my messages and throw them in the trash? What the hell is wrong with you? You used to be something special to me, but now I see you're just like every other guy I've met. I was wrong about you. You're a piece of garbage. XOXO. I felt a mixture of anger and relief at the note. Whoever this woman was, she didn't know me well enough to make judgment calls like that about me. At the same time, it seemed like this could be the end of the whole strange ordeal. That time, I put the notes in my pocket and tossed them into a trash can in the parking garage on my way home. Whoever was leaving them, they were checking the trash in my office. With any luck, they would move on and get over their fixation. No such luck. Only a few days later, there was another sticky note on my monitor. This time it was neon green. Had they written me so many damn notes that their yellow pad had run out? My throat tightened as I pulled it from the screen and read, We all have our shortcomings, but I'm willing to forgive you. Please stop throwing away my notes. These little moments mean so much to me, and it hurts to know you don't feel the same. That's okay, though. Your feelings for me will change with time. If they don't, I may have to hurt someone. XOXO. I immediately took the note to the HR office. One of the reps read it, her eyebrows raised and her head held back in surprise. She placed it down on her desk and pulled off her reading glasses. How long has this been going on, Paul? She asked me in a concerned tone. I'm not sure exactly, I said, scratching my head. They've left a dozen notes. 2 dozen, maybe. Do we have security cameras on the floor? No, she said, shaking her head. No cameras, I'm afraid. Too expensive. Same reason they laid off the security officer in the building. Post-COVID America isn't exactly thriving. She gave me a look of sympathy and told me to tell her if any more notes showed up on my computer. I nodded and told her I would. We both silently acknowledged that this was the first of many conversations on the matter. Over the next few weeks, I made multiple trips to the HR office to report the notes. They rambled endlessly about how heartless I was, how angry I'd made them, and the violent things they would do to me if I didn't respond soon. It was becoming exhausting. Last week when I arrived to work, there was a hot pink sticky note on my computer monitor. I was at a breaking point. The notes wouldn't stop. HR didn't know who was leaving them, and my place of work was doing nothing to put an end to this. At that moment, I would have done anything to get it to end. The note offered the option. I get it, you're not interested. I'll back off, but only if you meet me tonight. I'll be on the 5th level of the parking garage near the stairwell exit. 8 p.m. Don't be late. XOXO. It was 7:58 p.m. when I stepped out of the elevator onto the 5th floor of the parking garage. My heart was racing, and a cold sweat ran down my back. From in front of the elevator, I had a clear view of the stairwell door about 200 feet away. No one was there, so I made my way in that direction to see if I could find them. Suddenly, a red ember glowed brightly in the shadow cast by the door. Someone was smoking a cigarette in the darkness. The muscles in my body tightened as I willed myself forward. My admirer was there, standing in the dark. "Hello?" I called out. A cloud of smoke billowed from the shadow. "It's Paul. You wanted to meet me?" A woman stepped out of the shadow and dropped the cigarette to the ground, grinding it with her foot. She held a gun in her left hand. It was my wife, Emily. "Emily?" I questioned. "What the hell are you doing?" "I left the notes as a test. A few days a month I stop in your office on my way to work and leave notes. The cleaning crew thinks I work there, I guess," she said, her face streaming with tears. "I thought after all the trouble we had from the affair, you would tell me if someone was trying to steal you away from me again." You left the notes?" I stammered. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I wanted to be sure you wouldn't try to meet another woman again," she said, lifting the gun toward me. "But you did. Here you are, trying to meet some easy score." "Emily, you can't be serious!" I shouted. "I came here to get this to stop. Why are you doing this?" "I knew you would," she said, but was cut off by the eruption of police sirens. She looked toward the ramp at the flashing blue and red lights. "You called the police?" I nodded. "Of course I did," I exclaimed. "I thought someone was going to hurt me if—" The thunder of a gunshot was all I heard before the world went black. I woke up in a hospital. My entire body ached. There were thick white bandages wrapped around my midsection. A nurse saw that I was conscious and ran to find the doctor. A police officer was in a chair beside me. After my physician entered the room, they explained that my wife had shot me in the abdomen and fled the scene. A manhunt was underway, but they hadn't located her yet. A protective detail would remain with me at the hospital until I was released. They never found her. That was about 5 years ago. I've relocated since then. New state, new job, new life. It's been relatively peaceful until recently. You see, yesterday I headed into the office a bit before the sun came up. When I turned the light on, there it was. A bright yellow sticky note on the center of my computer monitor. Working for a residential property management firm is about as glamorous as it sounds. It's a decent living, but most of the tenants can drive you batshit crazy, especially at Martin Place. About half pay their rent late if they pay it at all. Eviction court takes up most of my time. Whenever I'm not booting out a squatter, I'm doing small repairs in the apartments. No one else in the office would take the place, so I got stuck with it. I can honestly say I never had a tenant I liked there, except for Doug Albertson. He was decent. In the beginning, anyway. In the end, he was the most abominable person I'd ever met. Doug moved into apartment 6, normal-seeming fella. Mid-40s, no kids, work-from-home job.
"Behavior modification,"
he said.
"I meet with people over video chat to help them break their bad habits. Smoking, cursing, nail biting, you name it, and I can put a stop to it."
He had his groceries delivered and took only his trash out at night. Nice, but reclusive. The guy never called for any kind of maintenance. The most communication I had with him was the day I showed him the place. You'd see him now and again in the hall, but that was it. The rest of the building was chaos. Non-stop parties, drunks stumbling down the hallway, and druggies passed out on the stairs. Most of these miscreants were guests of Toby Hansen in apartment 7. He raised hell all day. I was walking down the stairs on a cold afternoon when I had one of my rare Doug sightings. He was walking up the steps with his mail. We waved to each other and mumbled hellos as we passed by.
Excuse me.
Doug called out from the top of the stairs.
May I speak with you for a moment? Sure,
I replied.
What you need, Doug?
He smiled uncomfortably and kicked his toe on the ground. You could tell he was uncomfortable. I looked at my watch to give him the silent hurry the hell up signal so we'd move things along.
The gentleman in apartment 7 keeps late hours,
he said very politely.
Very noisy. Do you think you could talk to him for me? Sorry, Doug,
I responded.
I've talked to Toby Hansen about a dozen times, telling him to keep that racket down. Son of a bitch ignores me. Can't evict him for being a turd. Kid pays his rent. Your best bet is to call the cops with a noise complaint. If the boy gets enough fines, maybe he'll shut up. I would rather avoid involving the police,
he said dryly.
Perhaps I can help him modify his behavior. Thank you for your help.
We said goodbye and went about our business. That was the last complaint I ever received about Toby Hansen. Suddenly, he became a model tenant. His rent was always in the drop box on time. I figured he must have gotten a job because he was never home when I was in the building. All of his no-good friends vanished. The parties came to an end. It didn't fix the other 10 piss-poor tenants, but it went a long way toward quieting the place down. Over the next few months, oddly enough, the apartment building started quieting down a great deal. The couple in apartment 3 stopped their round-the-clock bickering and yelling sessions. For as long as I could remember, you'd always hear them shouting at each other anytime you were in the building. Shattering plates, clothes being thrown out the window, arguments in the hallway. One day, they were just quiet. I'd get a maintenance request every other month or so from them, which I'd take care of while they were at work. Otherwise, not a peep. I popped by the building on the 2nd of the month to check the rent box and was surprised to see Doug again. He lived on the 2nd floor, but I could swear he was coming out of apartment 5, Joe Kimbler's place. He was a violent alcoholic with an impressive rap sheet. Didn't seem like Doug's kind of company. But who's to judge?
Morning, Doug,
I shouted and tossed my hand in the air in his direction. The building was as quiet as a tomb. A welcome, if not unusual, change.
This may be the most peaceful I've ever heard this place.
Doug smiled and waved in return.
It's all about behavior modification, sir,
he replied as he started up the steps.
Your suggestion worked. I spoke with Mr. Hansen as well as the other residents. It seems my skills were able to help them work through some of their issues. Have a good day. You too, Doug,
I shouted back to him. He vanished into his apartment. My job had become manageable, enjoyable even. That was until August of this year when half of the rent checks from the building bounced. I called the tenants multiple times, but not a single one of them answered. Probably left 3 dozen voicemails. Hell, 100 text messages. Emails, not that anyone checks the damn things anymore. No answer. I was shocked to see Doug's name on the list of bounced checks. After a few days and no returned calls, I headed over to the building and started knocking on doors. No one on the 1st floor answered. They weren't a likely bunch to maintain regular employment, so I figured a few of them were dodging me. I headed up the stairs and knocked on Doug's door. No answer. I hammered harder, calling his name, but still no response. Just as I was turning to walk down the stairs into the car, I heard a muffled noise inside. I called his name a few times, but no answer. Just those muffled cries. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my key ring and slid the master key into the lock. As I pushed the door inward, An overwhelming smell washed over me. Ammonia and rotting food, maybe. Smelled like a damn kennel.
Doug?
I shouted.
You here? You okay?
No answer other than a muffled voice coming from his bedroom. Concerned he may be hurt, I headed for the door and opened it. The stench intensified so badly that my eyes began to water. Suddenly, the room was filled with a chorus of muffled moans and sobs. Along the walls of the bedroom were dog cages. Inside each one was one of the building tenants. Their ankles and wrists were tethered together, dirty rags in their mouths, and shock collars around their necks. On a table in the center of the room sat a single sheet of paper. I picked it up and read the brief script. I apologize for the bad check, sir. Some things cannot be avoided. I won't be returning. But as a thank you for the wonderful accommodations, I have completed my behavior modification sessions with your tenants. They shall trouble you no longer. Yours respectfully, Doug Albertson. Is the recorder on? I don't see the red light. Wait. Okay, I see it now. Sorry. I'm just a little nervous. Look, Bob always seemed like a decent enough guy. He was a little quiet, sure, but very friendly. Working as an accountant at an insurance company isn't the most exciting job in the world, and doesn't tend to attract the most exciting people either. We didn't know him well enough, even though he'd been there about a decade. His office was pretty sterile. No picture of a wife or a husband, for that matter. No pictures of children. He never shared personal details about his life. Everyone in the office would invite him to birthday parties or potlucks at lunch, but he just stayed in his office. Ate at his desk every day as far back as I can remember. A bologna sandwich, a bottle of water, and half of a banana. Never deviated from his routine. Seemed like a good enough guy, though. Mr. Applegate, our manager, he was less pleasant. He was a micromanager if I ever met one. No detail of a project was too small for him to scrutinize. The guy would rip you to shreds in a meeting for the smallest error. Everyone walked on eggshells around him. I don't think anyone deserved what happened to him, though. During an afternoon meeting, Mr. Applegate was lecturing the staff about the importance of double-checking all financial documents for final submission. Our error percentage on financial reports last month had increased from 1% to 1.5%. In our favor, mind you. But that was beside the point to Mr. Applegate.
And who do we have to thank for making us look like a cluster of morons to the head office?
Mr. Applegate asked us dramatically.
Bob Brooks, accountant extraordinaire. Stand up, Bob, so we can give you a round of applause for sending out the wrong numbers.
Bob stood hesitantly as Mr. Applegate clapped loudly. No one else joined him. We just felt bad for Bob. We'd all taken our share of insults over the years, but we'd never seen Mr. Applegate go after Bob. Sometime in March, Mr. Applegate stopped showing up to work. It was out of the blue. He had worked there for over 20 years, and you could set your watch by the time he walked in the door each day. Things went on as usual for a few days, but it became clear he wasn't coming back. He ignored every phone call or email sent his way. A rep from corporate stopped by at the end of the week and called Bob into the conference room. The rep had decided Bob would be our interim manager until the position was filled. Most of us were indifferent. He wasn't anyone's friend, but no one disliked him. To our surprise, Bob was a fantastic manager. The office ran more smoothly than ever. Productivity was up. We weren't being micromanaged. Bob stayed in his office most of the day, unless he needed something specific, which wasn't often. He took care of the corporate side of things, and we took care of the day-to-day operations. It was nice, really. At the end of the last quarter, Bob surprised us with a big announcement.
According to the main office, he said quietly, our numbers are the highest in the state. You have all done excellent work. As a reward, we will have a barbecue in the empty field beside the parking lot. I will put a sign-up sheet on the break room door for sides and drinks, but I'll bring the main course."
With that, he headed back to his office. The day of the cookout arrived and we all met in the field at the end of the day. A few of those folding tables sat on the edge of the parking lot by the field covered with food. You know, casseroles and dips, things like that. There was Bob, standing behind the grill cooking steaks and smiling happily to himself. We all ate until we thought we'd be sick. I'll be damned if that wasn't how it turned out. Anyway, the part you wanted to know. We had just finished packing up from the barbecue. Bob sat in front of me at the exit onto the main road. I guess he didn't see the car coming when he pulled out, and the red Jeep clipped the back of his van, knocking open the back door and sending his white cooler crashing to the ground. That's when I saw it. Couldn't tell exactly what it was at first. There were some leftover steaks from the cookout scattered on the road. I thought there were steaks anyway. I feel sick thinking about it. That's when I saw the hand sticking out of the cooler. Before I could register what I was looking at, Bob peeled away in his damaged van, leaving the cooler behind. I don't know why the hell I got out and looked, but I did. Already told your officers my fingerprints would be on the lid of the cooler. I lifted up the lid, and that's when the arm rolled out. Inside were the rest of the pieces of Mr. Applegate. The parts we didn't eat at the cookout. I don't know why he did it. Have you found him yet? Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Talked nicely.
We had reached cruising altitude, and the passenger airplane I was sitting aboard was sailing turbulently through the sky, riding on air currents and exploiting physics in ways that I would never understand. Maybe it was my ignorance of these principles which made me so nervous. My legs trembled with constant vibrations. My teeth had been chattering for a while during takeoff, but now my nerves had settled down to a dull roar.
"Are you sure you're all right?"
The white-haired man sitting next to me asked, his hand settling on my arm in a comforting way.
"Should I call the stewardess over? She can get you some water or a cup of tea to calm the nerves. Maybe a shot of brandy, too."
He laughed, gripping my arm just a little too firmly now.
"I'm fine," I said. "The worst of it's past. As long as we don't run into engine trouble, I should be okay."
That statement caught a few angry glares from passengers nearby, who quickly went back to reading or talking amongst themselves. I scolded myself internally for saying my worst fears out loud. Nobody liked to think about engine trouble when they were flying over the Atlantic Ocean in the middle of the night.
"Well, let's not speak of those things just now. Do you want a book to read? I brought a spare novel. It's a John Grisham."
No thanks.
"Well, how about some television? I think they have cable on these little things nowadays."
He pointed at the screen on the headrest in front of me. I hadn't even noticed it there.
"That's a good idea. Maybe I can find something to distract myself."
I turned the power on and noticed immediately the lack of sound. Of course, I had forgotten to bring earphones.
"Here,
The man next to me said, handing me a pair of his own.
I'm not using them right now. You can borrow them."
They were the kind with foam pads on the outside of the headphones, not earbuds, so I felt relatively safe using them, even though I am a bit of a germaphobe. At least we wouldn't be swapping earwax.
"Thanks,"
I said, taking them and putting them on, plugging the cord into the headphone jack. A squeal of feedback caused me to recoil. I turned the volume down, finding it had been set to maximum. The man was speaking again, and I pulled back the headphone to hear him better.
"Anything I can do to help? I used to have a terrible fear of flying, you know. But after you do this a few times, you start to get used to it."
I smiled weakly, feeling nauseated from not eating. I hadn't been able to stomach breakfast that morning or any other meal for that matter. It had been over 24 hours since I'd eaten or slept due to my nerves about flying. Putting the earphones back on, I began to flip through the channels on the little television set in front of me. The Discovery Channel came on and I decided to leave it there. It was a show about the Amazon rainforest, describing ancient civilizations which had resided in the jungles. Using new technology, they had found the outlines of massive cities which had housed millions of Amazonians. Their gods and their myths, lost over hundreds of years. I was watching this as the man sitting next to me began to remove something from his bag. It was a Tupperware container with a bright red lid on top. He opened the lid, and an odor more foul than anything I had ever experienced wafted out, hitting me in the face like a punch to the nose. It smelled like old, rancid seafood, like a dumpster which has been sitting open in the hot sun, full of used diapers and bad shrimp. The man produced a fork from his bag and lifted the container to his nose, closing his eyes as he savored the smell. Using his hand like a fan, he waved more of the stink towards his face, like a gourmand about to eat a Michelin star meal. Despite my own disgust, I couldn't help but steal a glance at what was inside the container. It looked like a fish had been tossed in a food processor, bones and all, only it hadn't been blended for long enough. There were still obvious pieces of bone, scales, and a fish head could be seen left partially intact. A bulging white eyeball was prominent among the pieces. He dug in his fork and took a large bite, going for the eyeball first. I heard it squish between his teeth and explode in his mouth. Black, viscous fluid dribbled down his chin, landing on his shirt. I couldn't believe nobody was complaining about the smell. Nobody else seemed to even notice, except for me. If not for how nice he had been to me, I would have said something. The stink was really making me feel sick. He saw me looking and dug his fork into the mess, then held out a large, heaping bite for me. I could practically see the stink lines coming off of it, like a cartoon skunk.
Did you want to try some?
He asked, his yellowed teeth showing as he smiled. That grin, somehow predatory and leering, made me second-guess everything about the man. Suddenly, he didn't seem nice anymore. He was mocking and cruel. His previous niceties just a facade to hide his true nature. And what an actor he was. "No thanks," I said, gulping down a lump of bile in my throat, trying to force a smile but failing miserably. "I just ate before the flight." He looked at me as if staring directly into my soul. Then he shook his head, as if saying no, like he didn't believe me. He sucked his teeth and went back to his meal.
You shouldn't lie to me, you know.
I pretended not to hear that and went back to looking at the television, trying to distract myself from the scene happening next to me. But my heart was thumping fast now, and I could feel a throbbing pulse in my jugular. The Amazon History show was finished, and now something else was on. It was a show about aviation disasters and how planes malfunction before crashing. A voiceover was speaking about horrible tragedies and near misses, showing computer-generated images illustrating the critical parts of the airplane which had broken. Then they switched to the passenger footage, which had been recorded on people's phones during troubled flights. During this Air Asia flight, severe turbulence caused the hospitalization of more than 5 passengers, as the plane was eventually rerouted to Tokyo. The screen showed images of a plane's interior, shuddering up and down violently and sending people flying into the ceiling and into the aisles. Women and men could be heard screaming as luggage cascaded from overhead compartments and people prayed for safety.
I was on that flight.
The man next to me said, licking his gore-smeared fingers clean.
One hell of an in-flight meal, let me tell you.
I tried turning off the television, but it didn't work. I tried to change the channels, but that button was broken too. It was stuck on this particular program, and there was no way to get rid of it. Instead, I tore the headphones off and unplugged them, handing them back to the man.
You don't want to watch it anymore?
He asked, slurping up some of the roadkill casserole. No, thanks for letting me use your headphones. I think I'm just going to try to take a nap.
Suit yourself.
he said, crunching a bone between his teeth.
I'll wake you up for meal service.
How he could still be hungry was a mystery to me, after he had just ingested such a monstrous dinner. I was already beginning to suspect there was something off about this man. The way he had changed was unsettling, and I felt like I was suddenly in the Twilight Zone. He just wasn't acting normal. So I watched him out of the corner of my eye for a while, trying to convince myself he was just a bit odd, and that there was nothing to worry about. He was just an eccentric guy with a very unusual diet. Eventually, I managed to convince myself that was true, and despite my unease, my tiredness won over everything else, and I fell asleep. I woke up and found myself completely alone on the plane. The hateful man sitting next to me was gone, and so was everyone else. The plane was still rumbling turbulently through the air, but now with no one in it. I looked outside and saw the sky was clear and bright blue, instead of night like it had been. But we were flying towards a dark thunderhead, booming with lightning up ahead in the distance. The storm front looked to be 10 miles high and 1,000 miles wide, a swirling, dark mass of angry weather, a Category hurricane that could take out a city without warning. I stood up and looked around the plane, still not understanding how it could be empty. Where had everyone gone? How long had I been out? Had they allowed me to sleep right through deplaning? Before I had another moment to think, the plane bounced up and down with a sickening yo-yo motion, then careened to the side. It did this a few more times in rapid succession, pitching forward and backward, so that I was thrown off balance and sent tumbling into the aisle. By the time it settled again, I wanted to puke. But at least the plane had leveled out again. I stood up from the floor and glanced out the window. I saw we had just passed into the massive thunderhead, and the inside of the plane was suddenly pitch black. There was a voice whispering from all around me, speaking my worst fears aloud. Black, inky tendrils like smoke began to reach out towards me from the shadows.
You're alone. The plane is going down. It will sink in the middle of the ocean. Freezing, drowning, water in your lungs. Falling, dropping, plunging from the sky. You know you're going to die.
I stumbled forward down the aisle, moving towards the cockpit. They needed to turn this plane around. How did they not see it? The interior panels of the plane on both sides suddenly made loud, grinding noises, as if the craft were beginning to break apart at the seams. The walls bent inwards, exposing the insulation, and a sound like a pop can slowly being crushed could be heard from all around me. Thunder crashed loudly outside and the panels pulled apart further, until I could hear the howling wind and rain and saw it blowing into the cabin. Lightning flashed, and I could see it through a gap in the side of the plane, which grew even wider before my eyes.
It's going down!
I yelled, stumbling forward.
We're gonna crash!
The plane dipped and climbed upwards in a sickening way as we hit another pocket of turbulence. My heart was in my throat, my stomach doing backflips as I lurched down the aisle holding onto the backs of chairs for support. Finally, I managed to reach the door of the cockpit. There were no flight attendants or passengers that I could see, but there had to be someone flying this plane. I began to hammer on the door, screaming at them to let me in.
It's going down!
I screamed again and again. I heard laughter coming from the darkness all around me as I yelled at the captain hiding behind a steel door. Once again, I found myself on the floor, being tossed around in the turbulence as we hit another rough patch. I put my hands over my head and tried to cover my face as the plane's fuselage began to come apart and the wings began to break free from the body. Looking up, I saw the door to the cockpit was now open, and there was no one sitting inside. The pilot and co-pilot seats were empty. I staggered to my feet to right the controls. Right at that moment, the plane began to plummet from the sky. It went into a nosedive, and I was once again thrown backwards into the aisle, this time by the force of multiple Gs. I was screaming when I opened my eyes and found myself staring up at the faces of dozens of anxious passengers all around me. The flight attendants looked less anxious and more upset, as I had just ruined their quiet flight with what probably appeared to be a total nervous breakdown. To the other passengers, it had appeared that I was sleeping, then collapsed into the aisle screaming about the plane crashing. I would have believed it if it was just a nightmare too, if not for the bruises I would find all over myself. Bruises left from my time being tossed around by the turbulence on the plane. Several concerned passengers and crew ushered me back to my seat, where I was momentarily left alone again with the old man and his yellow teeth and horrible appetite.
You made quite a scene back there,
He said, picking his teeth with a toothpick.
It was so real, I muttered. How did it feel so real?
He didn't answer. Instead, he began to speak about another topic.
Do you know what's funny about fear?
He asked. The question was hypothetical, so I just looked at him and waited for his answer.
The funny thing about fear, at least when it comes to you humans, is that it doesn't work well if it gets dumped on you all at once. You need to get scared, then feel like everything is okay. Then you can get scared again even more. But you start to feel desensitized to it if it comes at you nonstop. That's why horror movies have highs and lows. Moments of build-up and tension before the jump scare.
The man's belly was swollen, and one of his shirt buttons popped off, flying into the seat in front of him and clicking loudly off the television screen embedded there. He looked full, fat, happy, and satisfied for the first time since I'd met him, as if he'd just eaten a huge meal. Gears were turning in my mind as I looked into his glossy black eyes and began to understand who he was, or at least what his motivations were. Just as I suspected, he was not a man at all.
Bright lad,
He said, as if he just read my mind.
I had a feeling you'd figure it out.
It was you. The voice in the empty plane. You made me think it was real, and then you fed on my fear. You dined on it like that disgusting shit in your Tupperware container. Ah, but fresh is always better than leftovers. I thank you, though. I haven't had a meal like that in quite a while. Your terror was so deep and so strong. What happened to you anyways?
I winced as if slapped, remembering my parents. Somehow, I had a feeling he already knew about them. Why else would he ask? Maybe he wasn't as satisfied as he looked. I hit the call button and waited for a stewardess to come over. Then I asked her if I could switch seats. I told her I'd sit anywhere, as long as it wasn't next to the disgusting old man beside me.
I think he's a demon, I said. Now, I know how that sounds, but hear me out.
The flight attendant gave me a worried look, as did several other passengers sitting in the vicinity. She cleared her throat and leaned in, speaking under her breath in an attempt to salvage what was left of my pride.
Sir, the seat beside you is empty. I've been watching you throughout this flight, and there's been nobody sitting there. You've been alone, and to be frank, you've been talking to yourself quite a bit. It's starting to worry some of the other passengers.
I stammered something, looking at the old man, unable to turn away from his wrinkled face and yellow teeth, pulled up in a widening grin.
It's my responsibility to alert the captain of this, and we will have you return home to America for a psychiatric evaluation. You've got bruises all over you, and it's obvious you're not able to care for yourself properly based on your behavior during this flight. You're a danger to yourself and possibly to others.
An air marshal was sitting nearby and stood up, removing a pair of handcuffs from his belt.
I've heard enough, and I agree with your assessment, miss. I appreciate your patience with this man. He's obviously very unwell.
Despite my protests, which quickly turned to screaming, he handcuffed me to my seat.
Luckily, this plane is on a return trip to America after a couple hours layover here, so we'll be back up in the air in no time.
The two of them walked away, leaving me alone with the fear-eating demon sitting next to me. His true form was slowly beginning to show through the cracking facade of his human appearance, and I could see the rotting hell flesh beneath.
No, please, don't make me go back. I don't want to go back. I'll take a boat. Let me take a boat. Just anything but this plane. You need to get me off this plane. Don't worry.
said the old man, drool cascading out from his lower lip.
They used to be scared of flying too, but after a few times, you'll start to get used to it.
Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Have you ever heard of Fata Morgana? It's an optical illusion similar to a desert mirage. The most common form of it is seen on the surface of the ocean. During the illusion, it seems as if boats are hovering a few yards above the water. But there's another version of Fata Morgana which is much more rare. If you do a quick internet search for Fata Morgana cities, you'll find some very surreal images. Cities which seem to float high above us, perched precariously on the clouds, like a modern Mount Olympus. The pictures look fake, but they are verified to be real. There's even video footage of these events. When people saw this illusion in China and in other places, they gasped and whispered fearfully amongst themselves. Some even fainted or fell to their knees and prayed, thinking the end of the world was upon them, that these were the angels of heaven and the cities of God coming to announce the end of days. But as always, those pesky scientists were there to scoff and say,
No, that isn't real. It's just an optical illusion.
Fata Morgana, they called it. That was the official explanation for the cities in the sky which disappeared just as quickly as they arrived. But those scientists didn't see it up close like we did. There's a whole plane full of people who will tell you the cities in the sky are real. They're no illusion. I was on a trip to Asia when this all happened. We were flying over Yangshi when suddenly something appeared in the clouds before our eyes. If not for the fact that I was looking out the window at that exact moment, I wouldn't have seen it. But as it happens, I was wide awake and admiring the view when the city appeared. The buildings resting on the clouds were dark and shimmering, almost exact replicas of the city far down below. Except we shouldn't have been able to see them from where we were. The optical illusion of Fata Morgana can't be viewed from within the image itself. It should have been impossible for us to see what we were seeing. But I wasn't alone. We all saw it. When I looked around the cabin of the airplane, I saw dozens of other passengers staring and pointing at the city in the sky as we flew through its mysterious borders, entering the surreal space that shouldn't exist. And then people began to scream. The airplane suddenly tilted half sideways as the pilot steered quickly to avoid something. I imagined a building shimmering and materializing in front of the airplane at the last second, like a mountain coming into focus during a snowstorm. Everyone on the packed airplane began to scream after that, as overhead luggage broke free from the compartments and began to rain down, injuring several passengers. A woman who had been sitting across the aisle from me fell down onto the floor, and I tried to help her up. But then the plane's axis tilted again, and I was thrown hard into the window. I turned around and was startled to see a hairline crack forming across it. But something even more terrifying caught my eye as I stared at the glass. Outside, there were creatures flying in the air. They looked like pterodactyls soaring between the massive black buildings. One of them landed on the wing, causing the craft to tilt and veer off course again. People screamed and shouted as they were thrown from their seats, and luggage came crashing out of the overhead compartments once again, emptying them of whatever was left inside. The creature on the wing of the plane began to skitter crawl towards my window, and I saw that its eyes were hollow black sockets. Its maw was like a giant beak made of shadow, full of liquid black teeth. It scrambled rapidly across the wing, heading in my direction, and I could have sworn it was looking straight at me with its dead, empty eyes. That broke me out of my silent terror, and I started screaming and pointed at the window as other passengers turned to look. Soon there was a small crowd forming around my seat, staring out at the horrible thing on the wing as it approached the window and began to scratch and claw and bash its face against the glass. I had never seen anything so desperate and insane, as if it had no purpose except to attack and to maim. A few seconds later, there were more of them, fighting with each other as they tried to get in. I saw they had long tails with triangle-shaped points at the end, like demons sent from hell. Or, I realized, maybe that's where we were. Had we died in a fiery explosion without any of us realizing it? Was this just a grim, horrible afterlife, which we were now destined to reside within for eternity? No, I refused to believe it. I refused to give myself to this place. I shook off that horrible idea and glanced back out the window, hoping it had changed and we were back on Earth again, in the real world. But no. The shimmering black buildings outside were so close now that I felt like I could see inside of them, if not for the fact that they were opaque. Whatever was inside was not meant to be seen by us, and I realized that was probably for the best. If these creatures were the birds of this hellish mirror world, I was scared to see what their people might look like. I began to suspect we had crossed over into an alternate dimension somehow, and I wasn't sure if we would ever be able to escape. Was this what happened to mysterious planes that went missing in the skies, over the Bermuda Triangle and in a handful of other places? I had heard of those events, but like everyone else, I just assumed they were planes with mechanical failures, or drunk and irresponsible pilots sleeping at the wheel. Turbulence and stormy weather, birds sucked into the engines, or hurricanes with hail the size of golf balls. There were 1,000 potential reasons for a plane to go down. Who would have thought that alternate dimensions could be responsible? I was snapped from my thoughts as the glass shattered and the plane lost cabin pressure. Alarms were suddenly blaring and the lights were flickering in the cabin as oxygen masks fell from the ceiling. People grabbed for them desperately as the creature began to squeeze its way into the plane through the window. Like a cat going through a chain-link fence, it sucked in its gut and its wings flattened down as it began to claw and scratch its way inside. Meanwhile, I was still desperately trying to snag one of the available oxygen masks. Since most people had been thrown from their seats, myself included, that was no easy task. The wind was rushing and whipping throughout the cabin, making it difficult to do much of anything. I scrambled over a nearby seat and reached for one available mask just as an older man was about to take it for himself. I left it for him without a second thought. The other ones nearby were also being used, I saw, and began to panic. Looking around desperately, the air becoming too thin to breathe, I finally spotted a handful of unused oxygen masks near the front of the economy section. I was halfway towards the back of the plane, and there were people in the aisles blocking my path, but I knew that I had to get up there. Like a game of musical chairs, there were only so many oxygen masks to go around on this packed flight, and I was seriously at risk of being the only one left standing when the music stopped. Lurching forward, I stumbled over injured people laying in the aisles. I looked back to see the creature was inside the plane now, and for some reason, it had its dead eyes fixed on me. It raced towards me, its horrible limbs leaving black, inky stains on the seats as it raked them with its claws. The world was spinning, and I was getting a terrible headache as my breathing quickened. My lungs were desperate for air. I fell over, unable to keep my balance, and began to crawl towards the front of the plane, my vision fading in and out. At one point, I must have blacked out, because I woke up to the thing on top of me, snapping its liquid black jaws just inches from my face. Screaming, I reached up to push it away, only to find that my hands sunk into the thing like molasses. It was tenacious and sticky, binding to my skin, refusing to let go.
Die, you hellspawn!
A man's muffled voice yelled, and I looked up to see a guy wearing an oxygen mask, holding a heavy-looking piece of luggage over his head with both hands. He threw it at the creature, and I recoiled, worried that it would crash right through the oily black creature and would land right on me. The heavy suitcase did just what I expected and slammed into the thing, splashing it in every direction like a water balloon being destroyed by a sledgehammer. The luggage landed on my gut, knocking the wind out of me and fracturing 3 ribs in the process. But luckily for us, it took care of the creature. I was still covered in its sticky black goo, but at least it wasn't about to eat me anymore. And for that, I was grateful. I stood up on shaking legs to thank the man for saving me, then doubled over in pain. My ribs were screaming at me with each breath I took, and my vision was going dark from a total lack of oxygen. The contents of the plane were still whipping around in the air of the cabin as the alarms sounded, and I heard the captain saying something about an emergency landing. And then everything went dark, and I passed out again, this time staying unconscious until after we landed. I woke up in a Chinese hospital. According to the official reports, none of what I've told you actually happened. They covered the whole thing up, as if it never occurred. We tried to tell them the truth. Me and several of the other passengers have kept in touch over the years, and we've all tried to get our story out there. Unfortunately, no one will believe us. The official reports contradict us at every step. The media won't even listen to our story, and I can't blame them, really. Fata Morgana, they tell us. It was Fata Morgana and nothing more. But I know what I saw. I know where we've been. Hell is real, and it's waiting for us in the clouds. I worked as a flight attendant for lots of different airlines before joining Marana Air. The management just treats us differently here. No one complains about their paycheck or has to worry about how they're getting to their accommodations from the airport between flights. Everything is taken care of for us. If you aren't familiar with Marana Airlines, you probably don't know about our signature all-black planes with their high ceilings and highly specific accommodations. If you thought Emirates was tailor-made for their passengers, you should see the bespoke treatment we give our guests. But there are certain rules when you fly aboard Marana Airlines, and those who don't follow the rules will face consequences beyond their understanding.
This is plush. Hot damn, Margie. Look at those seats. Hey, man, I gotta ask, are those leather?
I smiled at the man and his wife, taking their tickets.
The finest Italian leather. We only use the best here on Marana. Right this way to your seats. I trust you've read your instruction manual?
The man cleared his throat from behind me as I walked them to their seats.
Yeah. What's that all about anyways? Is that some kind of joke? Because if it is, we don't get it.
Not a joke, merely a formality. This is a different sort of airline than you might be accustomed to, that's all. Our owner does things in her own way and provides a lot of free upgrades at great cost to herself. All that she asks is that passengers read the manual carefully and follow its directives.
The couple sat down in their seats and I took their carry-ons, stowing them in the overhead compartment. They were looking up at me with worry in their eyes. I'd seen that look 1,000 times. Here, I have a spare. Just read it through as best you can. They began to study the manual I'd handed to them, and I went back to see the next group of passengers. There was always one. Today, it looked like there might be two. The plane took off as the engines roared loudly, and I looked around to ensure everyone had their seatbelts on. Nobody was in the aisles. So far, so good. Once we were at cruising altitude, I began with drink service. Making my way down the aisle, I finally got to the couple. They were smiling, looking at me sheepishly.
We get it.
The woman said.
Very funny.
My face remained blank. I knew these two were going to be a problem.
I had to read it 3 times.
The man said, grinning.
You really had me going. Man, the big corporations these days are really getting clever with their marketing. I've seen Wendy's Twitter account. This is like that, right? Viral marketing? Well, you got me. I tweeted this thing out and it's already got a bunch of likes and comments. People think it's hilarious.
I tried not to show any reaction to what he'd just said.
Can I see the pictures you shared?
He showed me, smiling.
Did you read number 12 in the manual?
I asked. His smile faltered for a second, and he began to read it again.
Don't share pictures of your flight on social media or with anyone who was not on the flight with you. But it's just a joke, right?
The woman asked.
It's not serious. I mean, look at these other rules. Number 4, don't breathe between minutes 48 and 49 of the flight. Number 8, if you see a man with no face serving drinks, do not speak to him.
I didn't laugh, and neither did any of the nearby passengers. They were looking coldly at the couple, waiting to see what would happen. There was always at least one. Somebody always had to break the rules.
Are you able to delete that post from social media? I asked. That part of it was actually real.
Oh, yeah. I guess I can. Sure, no problem.
He pulled up the tweet and tapped a couple times on the screen.
There, it's gone. No harm, no foul.
The captain's voice suddenly came on the overhead PA.
Oh, Mr. Thompson. If only that were true.
He said in his monotone pilot's voice.
Unfortunately, you have violated the rules of Marana Airlines, and as such, you are subject to its punishments.
The couple's faces were slowly draining of color, turning pale and white as sheets.
If this is a joke, it's not a very good one.
The woman said, as if trying to convince herself she wasn't scared. Several other passengers stood up from their seats and closed in on the pair. They would learn the rules eventually, just like all of us did. When we were preparing for takeoff in Paris, I saw a man coming up the ramp and looking at the plane in wonderment. He whistled softly to himself as he stepped on board.
Wow, this is quite an airplane you folks have for yourselves. Better than Emirates. That's what the guy at the counter told me anyways. Is that true? You guys got them hot towels you can put on your face?
Mr. Thompson came over and took the man gently by the arm, leading him towards his seat. I could tell from the moment I met him, he would make a fine flight attendant.
Oh, we certainly do have those hot towels you put on your face. They come out piping hot and steamy from the oven, and we bring them straight over to you after meal service.
I can't get one now, can I?
Mr. Thompson shot me a glance. I shook my head. His wife, Margie, was standing next to me, watching her husband.
It's him then?
Yes,
I told her.
there's always at least one. Sometimes 2 or 3 at the most. But we always get a new passenger with each flight.
And they never follow the rules?
I shook my head sadly, as her husband tried to explain to the man why he couldn't have his hot towel right now, and he bickered about why he should be able to.
Have you read the instruction manual? Here, I have a spare copy. This is vital information. Vital. Read it through very carefully.
Mrs. Thompson had to ask the question. I knew she would, since they always did.
How can we keep getting new passengers? This plane is big, but not that big.
I pulled back the curtain beside us, which revealed the forward part of the plane. Rows and rows of seats extended on and on, going forever into the distance. It was like looking into a mirror which was positioned in front of another mirror. The seats never ended, just getting smaller and smaller as they faded off into the distance and passengers became the size of ants.
Welcome to first class,
I said.
You work hard enough. One day you might get to sit up there.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Doctor Nicely.
Breaking into the house is easy. I don't even need to be quiet. Not really. This neighborhood loves Halloween, and it's in full swing right now. I can hear occasional screams from the house across the street. They have one of those motion sensor decorations of a witch that pops up from a cauldron to scare kids as they pass. The house next door is blasting one of the Halloween movies. Jamie Lee Curtis screams in terror as Michael Myers walks menacingly after her. Even though there were no lights on, I walked up to the front door of the house just a few minutes ago, dressed in my skeleton costume. I rang the doorbell and knocked. Listened hard. Nothing. No sign of movement. No television on. The woman who lives here is gone for the night. So I circled the block and then came back around, headed to the back door. I make sure my gloves are on nice and tight before I put an elbow through the pane of glass nearest the doorknob. I unlock the door and move inside like a wraith. Upstairs, I find the mother lode, a box of expensive jewelry. I dump it all into my backpack. I'll remove the stones and sell them separately. The metal I'll have melted down and sold. A car door slams outside. Stepping over to a window, I part the curtains and look down. The woman is walking from her car to the front door. She looks like she's just been to a Halloween party, dressed in a skimpy Lara Croft outfit. Shit. She disappears from sight as she moves up the porch steps. Just as I'm about to turn around to get the hell out of Dodge, I see a dark figure appear from around the hedge at the edge of the property, running full tilt toward the porch. I assume it's a man, but I can't be sure. Whoever they are, they're wearing black robes and one of those scream masks. I move out of the woman's bedroom, looking for a place to hide until I can sneak out of the house. A loud thump sounds from downstairs. I wonder if it's the door getting knocked open. The thump is followed quickly by a woman's scream. My heart rate is suddenly jacked. Is she being attacked? I move over to the top of the stairs. The sounds of a struggle reach my ears.
Get away!
The woman screams. Footsteps thud on the hardwood floors. The woman appears below me, heading up the carpeted stairs toward the landing. Then, the black-robed figure appears behind her. The person in the scream mask grunts, the sound telling me it's a man. He grabs her ankle, causing her to fall face first on the landing. He grabs her arms and pins them behind her back with one hand. Then he starts pulling at her clothing. My blood boils. I may be a thief, but I'm not lacking in empathy. What I'm taking from the woman can be replaced by an insurance company. What he's trying to take from her can never be put right. She's still whimpering, fighting. He must be strong, the way he's holding her down with only one hand. I move to a hallway table, grabbing a heavy brass lamp, yanking the plug out of the wall as I head back to the stairs. I take them 3 at a time, reaching the landing in seconds. The man's shrouded head moves slightly as I bring the lamp back, readying it for the blow. He looks up at me just before the base of it connects with his masked face. He topples off her, and I hit him again with the lamp, and again. The woman is screaming. She scrambles away from her attacker. The guy goes limp after the third hit. I can't see how bad the damage is, but judging by the feel of the hits, it's pretty damn bad. Life-threatening, probably.
What are you doing?
The woman screams. I straighten and turn to look at her. What kind of question is that for someone who just kept her from getting raped?
What the did you do? Oh my God.
She's crying now. She crawls back over to the masked figure.
Miles, that's my fucking boyfriend. We were playing. It wasn't real.
My stomach cramps. I suddenly realize I'm no longer wearing the plastic skull mask I had on earlier. I took it off and put it in my backpack as soon as I saw the house was empty.
What the are you doing in my house?
The woman says. She pulls the guy's scream mask off. It doesn't look good. I don't think the guy is breathing anymore. The woman makes a choking sound. She moves down the stairs. I step after her, still holding the lamp in my hand.
It's okay.
She says, her voice shaking. She doesn't look at me.
It was an accident. It's okay.
Where are you going? I ask.
It's okay. I'll tell them. It was all a misunderstanding. Wait,
I say. My mind is racing 500 miles a minute. The few options I have repeat in my head, gaming out the possibilities. I know the same thing is going through her head. She stops at the bottom of the stairs. 5 feet separate us. She looks up at me, and then she runs. I chase her. She makes it through the front door before I can get to her, but I lunge out and hit her in the back of the head with the lamp just as she's about to scream for help. She goes down hard, smacking her face into the wooden porch. I look out at the road. A couple of kids are heading out from a house across the street. They're oblivious, looking at the candy in their bags and laughing to each other. They disappear from view. There's a lull in traffic. I bring down the lamp on the woman's head 4 more times in quick succession. I leave her there. People will think it's a Halloween decoration, at least for a while. I head back into the house and make sure the boyfriend is dead. It takes another couple of whacks. He's got a thick skull. After putting my mask back on, I head out of the house through the back door, thinking this is what I get when I try to do a good deed. Anyway, I still have a few more houses to hit. Halloween is the best night of the year for me. Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Story 2, The Last Halloween. Standing next to the bed makes me feel nothing. I reach my left hand out toward the hem of the purple and green blanket, but I can't bear to touch it. Part of me wants to see what's underneath, even though I already know. The two-person shaped bulges stay covered. I pull my left hand back. In my right hand, I clutch a kitchen knife. I didn't dare turn on the light when I came into the room, but the blinking orange lights from outside the window provide enough illumination to see by. I know the room well anyway. I could navigate it in total darkness. There's no way I can lift the blanket. No way I can look. I have to accept that. Moving to the window, I look out onto the street. Halloween decorations wink and sway and grin vacantly. The orange pumpkin lights lining the roof above the window blink. There is no movement on the street, aside from orange, yellow, and brown leaves skittering along the asphalt and flapping in the gutters. I imagine one of the bodies on the bed behind me sitting up, the blanket falling down to reveal a haunted, horrific face. My throat thickens. Could it be true? Spinning around, I see that neither body has moved. I feel a deep sense of relief, tinged with regret, and quickly swallowed by sorrow. Moving down the stairs, I wonder if I'm really here. Maybe this is what death is like. So quiet and lonely. Maybe I'm dead at 16 and I don't even know it. I pause at the bottom of the stairs, lifting my left arm up and poking it with the kitchen knife. I wince, and the sharp point draws a bead of blood. Still here. The front door is open, and a few leaves have blown into the entryway. They crunch under my shoes as I walk outside. The Thurmans, who live across the street, have left their front door open too. I walk down the concrete path toward the street. It's bordered on both sides by a perfectly manicured lawn, dotted with creepy ghosts and flickering jack-o'-lanterns. Before crossing the street, I look both ways. Habit. Of course, there's no traffic, no vehicles, no people. The trick-or-treating is all done, finished, forever. The Thurmans have a scarecrow on their porch swing. As I stand there, looking at it, I sense movement behind me. Looking back, I think I see a dark figure standing in my house's doorway. My heart thuds within my chest, and I force myself to close my eyes for a long moment. When I open them again, there's only a dim doorway, no figure standing there. I find the Thurmans in their living room, slumped on the couch. Their oldest son was 2 years younger than me. His eyes are still open, staring blankly at the silent home movies playing on their television. The younger one, Toby, is tucked between his father and mother, his face screwed up in fear, or pain, or both. I have no problem looking at them. I don't feel much of anything. Numbness. The other houses in the immediate area hold similar scenes. Freshly dead bodies. Some of them are gathered together, like the Thurmans. Some aren't. Delirium seems to take root, and I wander down the middle of the street, looking at houses for signs of life. Surely, I'm not the only one left. Soon enough, I find myself nearing the center of our little village, our town, our community, whatever you want to call it. I hear the sound of footsteps coming from just around the bend, followed by the sound of a car door shutting. At the corner of a tall wooden fence, topped with string lights of little ghosts, I peer toward the mansion there. The mansion at the center of town. There's a man moving around there, rushing down the wide marble staircase to a blue Range Rover, parked in the circular driveway. He carries several bags, making his journey cumbersome. I know his face well. The craggy contours of it are second only to the curves of my own face. But the expression there now is one I've never seen before. He's afraid. I've only ever seen him supremely confident, beaming with benevolence. He has many names: Master, Father, Divine One. Suddenly, the implications of him moving around with that look on his face crashed down on me. He's the one that convinced us all we should leave. He's the one whose nonsense I've been listening to almost my entire life. He's the one who told all the parents to make sure the kids went first. He insisted that the veil was thinnest between worlds on Halloween, that we could travel into the afterlife as gods. And after so many years of believing this bullshit, everyone in our little community took it as gospel. I heard my parents talking about it a week ago. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard them talking, and they mentioned my name. They were discussing how they would get me to eat the poison candy before taking their own doses. We would travel together into eternal life. Halloween was a great time to do it, they said. Not only was it the time Father had prophesied, but it would be easy to get kids to take the poison. What kid doesn't like candy? But when the time came, I fought my mom. I told her I didn't want to die, that I didn't want her and my father to die, but she wasn't hearing it. So when she went to get my father, I switched out the candy bar with the poison in it for one that I'd stashed away. I knew they would use my favorite candy. When she came back with my father to make me eat it, I gobbled up the untainted candy. And I pretended to die. I didn't know what else to do. I was afraid, terrified. And until now, I thought it was pure cowardice. I regretted not eating the candy bar. I regretted missing out on the trip to eternal life. But now that I see the Divine One and the fear on his face, I know it wasn't cowardice. Now I know the meaning of true cowardice. I've seen cowardice incarnate, and its name is the Divine One. I looked down at the knife still in my right hand. I had originally taken it to protect myself against anyone who might force me to eat poison. But now I know it has a different purpose. It has been prophesied. When the Divine One heads back into his mansion, I run up and hide beside the Range Rover, out of view. I listen as he hurries down the stairs again, huffing with his luggage. He's fat now. He's grown fat off the backs of the people in this community, this cult. He shuts the Range Rover's trunk and starts around toward the driver's side, where I crouch. I remember the bulges of my parents' bodies, their death masks hidden by the blanket. I wanted to look, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. The Divine One sees me as he comes around the side of the vehicle. His eyes go wide just before I spring, lunging toward him, leading with the knife. He gurgles and whines as he collapses against the Range Rover, clutching at the knife stuck in his neck. "You have nothing to worry about if you're right," I say to him. "You can live forever as a god. But if you're wrong..." Looking into his eyes, I know he made it up. I can tell by the fear there, the regret, the shame. He made it all up. For what? Soon the world will know what happened here. Just another crazy suicide cult. But I'll tell the story. I'll try to make them understand. I'll prevent this from ever happening again, if I can. Story 3. The Magic of Halloween. The jack-o'-lantern hits the parked car with a loud thud. I wince, looking up at the dark house, sure that lights will come on any second. Johnny, who everyone calls Jolly, laughs cruelly at the mess he's made. The hit dented the car door.
Come on, Jolly.
I whisper.
Let's just go home.
Jolly ignores me. He's not really jolly, not in the truest sense of the word. He's only happy when he's causing pain or discomfort to others. I know this better than anyone. For reasons I'll never understand, my mom fell in love with his dad. Now we're stepbrothers. Hooray. I walk away from the house. There's a path of destroyed pumpkins behind us, along with smashed eggs on front doors, toilet paper snagged in trees, and vandalized Halloween decorations.
Where you going, dipshit?
Jolly calls out, running to catch up with me.
Home.
I say.
I don't care if I get in trouble for leaving your side. I'll just tell them what you've been out here doing this whole time.
Jolly grabs me by the cape and yanks me back. I'm wearing a Thor costume. I should have known better than to wear a costume with a cape. It just makes things easier for Jolly.
You tell anyone anything, I'll curb stomp you, you little sh**.
His breath smells of half-digested candy and chewing tobacco. I don't know what a curb stomp is, but it doesn't sound good. At 16, Jolly is 4 years older than me and a lot bigger. He's wearing black clothes and carrying a black backpack.
Fine,
I say, yanking my cape away from him.
I won't tell. Let's just go home. Not yet,
He says.
I want to hit the Delgado house first. Teach those f***ing assholes a lesson. And you're my alibi. You know what that means? It means you're going to lie and say I was with you at the movies all night. Halloween double feature.
At least we're getting close to home. The Delgados live just 1 block over. Jolly has been feuding with their 2 sons for as long as I can remember. They're nice kids. At least, they've always been nice to me. It's probably why Jolly hates them. He likes to smash out any kindness. I guess he wants everyone to be as miserable as he is. He's now out of toilet paper and eggs, so we don't make many stops on the way. Although he does smash nearly every pumpkin he sees. I'd like to smash him one of these days. We walk up to the Delgado house, which is a nice 2-story white house with dark blue trim. It has a big oak tree in the front yard. Halloween decorations hang from the massive branches. There are 2 lines of jack-o'-lanterns along the walkway leading up to the house. Surprisingly, Jolly ignores these.
Well, what do we have here?
He says, walking up to the porch and snagging a huge pumpkin. It's no jack-o'-lantern. It hasn't been carved. But it has something painted on the front in red letters. Do not smash. Jolly laughs his cruel laugh again as he chucks the pumpkin against the concrete walkway. It cracks, but doesn't break apart. But Jolly hasn't noticed. He's been picking up the glowing jack-o'-lanterns and smashing them. I stand back, watching for cars on the road, or for lights coming on in any of the houses. When I turn my head back towards Jolly's frenzy, I see the cracked pumpkin move. At first, I think he must have bumped into it, but he's nowhere near it. Besides, it's still moving. The dark crack widens and the pumpkin breaks apart, revealing a mess of pumpkin guts. But the guts are moving now too. A small, bumpy orange arm with black claws on the 4 stubby fingers emerges from the mess, followed by another arm. Then a head comes out, shaking like a dog trying to get dry, throwing off slimy pumpkin guts. The head looks like a small pumpkin, but it has eyes and a mouth that glow with poison green light. The rest of its body emerges as the creature crawls free of the wreckage. It moves on all 4s, its legs shorter than its arms, but thicker. The whole thing looks like it could be made out of pumpkin parts, but it moves with the fluidity of a cat. Its glowing eyes sweep over me, its jack-o'-lantern mouth stuck in an evil grin.
Jolly?
I stutter. He pays no mind. The creature looks over at him. He's just finishing with the jack-o'-lanterns, turning his attention toward the decorations hanging from the oak tree.
Jolly!
I shout.
What the hell is it? There's someone coming. Look!
I say, pointing toward the creature, which is stalking slowly toward him. Jolly sees it and laughs.
What the hell is this? A cat dressed up for Halloween?
He takes 2 steps toward it and tries to kick the creature, but it grabs onto his leg. Jolly screams.
What the f***?
He says, jumping around and kicking his foot. The creature's claws must be sinking into his flesh through his black pants. The thing scrambles up his leg and moves up under his sweatshirt, all while Jolly beats at it and screams. I don't see what the thing does, but I can guess as blood spews out from under the hem of his sweatshirt. Suddenly, the bulge in his sweatshirt goes flat. The energy has gone out of Jolly. He coughs up blood and clutches his stomach area. His eyes are dull with immense pain. He stumbles around while I watch, speechless. Then he slumps against the oak tree's trunk and stops moving. I knew one day Jolly would go too far. I knew he would come across someone who wouldn't take his crap lying down. But I could have never imagined this. Movement from the Delgado house catches my eye. I look up to one of the second-floor windows to see the two teenage brothers looking out. They both wave at me. I wave back. Then I turn and head for home, thinking about that creature, curled up and sleeping in Jolly's chest cavity. I doubt it will be there in the morning. It's just one of those things. The magic of Halloween. I know just what I'll tell my mom and my stepdad when I get home. I'll tell them that Jolly ditched me, so I went to the movies. A Halloween double feature. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Dr. Nicely.
The Rig was an oasis for the homeless. 2 miles off of the Texas coast, it was an abandoned oil rig turned into a shelter for the homeless. It was against the law, but the authorities never seemed to pay us any mind. Out of sight, out of mind. Isn't that the general position most places take on the homeless? I'm not sure how long the rig had been going before I ended up there, but when I arrived, it was like a full-fledged town on the water. A few people ran boats back and forth to the mainland. Some of the long-term residents operated like a city council. There were shops, a clinic, and a gas-powered generator to charge cell phones. A few local charities and food pantries would bring fresh water and dry goods a few times a month. Everyone got a bit for themselves, but the bulk was saved for those who couldn't go to the mainland for day labor. The most impressive feat was the garden. Over countless years, people had hauled dirt a few buckets at a time until there were dozens of planting beds on the old helicopter pad. No one officially oversaw it, but an older lady named Greta prided herself with constant care and tending. I'd lived there for 7 years. After losing all of my worldly possessions, the rig was the first place I ever felt at home. Shuffling from the alleyways to the shelter and back to the alleyways had worn me down. I had almost given up when Freddie told me about the rig. "I'm heading for the coast, Tim," Freddie told me one day. He was a decade older than me and a good friend. I wouldn't have gotten through my first few years on the streets if it weren't for him. "Got an old friend who says there's plenty of space out on an oil rig. A fella at the coast will take me out to it for a few bucks. You ought to come." "An oil rig?" I asked in disbelief. "Why the hell do you want to go live on an abandoned oil rig? Sounds too risky." Freddie laughed and swatted me on the back. "It's like a floating city. No cops to mess with you. No business owners chasing you away from their shops. Just a bunch of people like us that came together to prop each other up. What have you got to lose? The convenience store canned you. Sleeping on the streets has lost its luster." 2 days later, we hitched a ride to the coast. Freddie and I were blown away after we arrived. When he told me about the rig, I had imagined a filthy squat pad filled with trash and waste. It was quite the opposite. Aside from the rust of the aging structure, the rig was kept immaculately clean. No one slept in the open. Each available inch of indoor space was dedicated to sleeping space and food storage. A kind woman named Janet gave us both sleeping bags and blankets upon our arrival, and took us to an old boiler room where there was available space to sleep at night. She told us we could leave our belongings in the boiler room, but Freddie and I were apprehensive.
Don't want anyone stealing my stuff,
Freddie said curtly.
Leaving stuff sitting around is a good way to get fleeced. You'll find the community here quite respectful of everyone's property,
she said. Janet reached into her back pocket and pulled out 2 yellow sheets of paper filled with handwriting and gave them to both of us.
Those are the rules here on the rig. We have a 3-strike policy here. If you break the rules 3 times, you're banished permanently.
We both began to read this list of rules. Rule 1, no theft of any kind. Failure to repay debts is considered theft. Rule 2, no fighting. Rule 3, no drug use. Rule 4, drinking is allowed in moderation. Rule 5, if you don't contribute food or goods to the community, you must work daily to maintain the rig. Rule 6, do not enter the mechanical room below the drill module.
Seems reasonable enough.
I said, and extended the list back to Janet.
Who decides if the rules have been broken? You can keep it.
She replied.
We have an informal council that meets every Saturday night in the mess hall. It's made up of our oldest residents. They will hear complaints and decide if a rule has been broken. If the incident is serious, the council will get together that day.
We thanked her and headed to settle in. Over the next few years, Freddie and I integrated nicely into the community on the rig. The population remained roughly the same. New people would arrive occasionally. Old-timers would move on from time to time. Freddie and I spent most of our time on the rig. Before he lost his job and home, Freddie had worked in construction and welding. The council was excited to find out about his experience and asked if he would be interested in helping maintain the facilities. He agreed, but asked that I be allowed to assist him. It was a comfortable life. The uncomfortable part came when we saw our first banishment. During a Saturday meeting with the council, a man was brought forward to answer for a rule infraction, his third. He was an older man with a long beard and a thin frame. His eyes were red with tears as he stood before the group.
My name is Albert Martin.
He said with a shaking voice.
I have been accused of stealing 3 cans of soup from a neighbor. Someone found the emptied cans under my cot. I was framed. Someone knew I'd been in trouble 2 times already and pinned this on me. Have mercy. I have nowhere to go.
The crowd murmured with discussion as the old man wept. Freddie and I could hear the conflicting opinions amongst the community. Some thought there wasn't enough evidence, while others said Albert was a known rule breaker and was likely guilty.
Albert Martin,
One of the councilmen said.
this is your 3rd infraction, and we cannot tolerate theft on the rig. Many here rely on the food donations we receive. You are banished and will not return here. No!
Albert shouted. He pulled out a rusted blade with a cloth-wrapped handle and held it toward the council.
I don't have anywhere to go. I didn't steal the damn food. It's a setup.
While the man waved the knife at the group in front of him, Freddie tapped me on the shoulder and beckoned me to follow him. He crept silently up the aisle behind the man. Moving surprisingly quick for his age, he darted forward and wrapped his arm around Albert's neck.
Get the knife!
Freddie shouted to me, and I pried the blade from the old man's hand.
Take him to the mechanical room downstairs,
Demanded a woman from the council.
We will hold him there until he can be taken back to shore.
Freddie and I carried the thrashing man out of the mess hall and down the stairs toward the mechanical room. A man trailed behind us and pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. We tossed him inside and slammed the hatch shut, and the man locked it.
You've killed me, you bastards.
Albert shouted from inside the room. He hammered on the door and threw his weight against the thick metal.
You hear me? You've killed me. They aren't taking me to the shore. Those damn things are gonna kill me.
Freddie and I turned to leave, but the old man's wails of fear and agony resonated in my mind. What things was he talking about? I would find out years later when Freddie was found guilty of his 3rd violation and ended up in the mechanical room. Freddie was a hard worker and well-loved in the community, but in his later years, he became overly fond of alcohol. He managed to keep it to himself for a while, but over time, he grew angrier when he was drunk. That's when the trouble began. His first violation was a simple fist fight. Freddie sat on his cot, drinking scotch and talking loudly to anyone who would listen. A man who slept in the far corner from us asked him to quiet down so he could sleep. Without warning, Freddie punched the man and told him to shut up. The second violation came when Freddie drunkenly rifled through another man's gear looking for cigarettes. He found half a pack of crumpled Marlboros and was closing the bag when the man entered. Freddy returned them, but the damage was done. His final violation came when a woman and her husband asked Freddy to fix a leak in one of the bunkhouses. He insisted it was already repaired, but they told him the leak had continued. Feeling insulted, Freddy shoved the husband and told him to piss off. When the man begged him to come to look at the leak, Freddy punched him. With that, the council decided his fate and had 2 men haul him off to the mechanical room to wait for a departing boat. That night, when I returned to my cot, I saw all of Freddy's belongings sitting on his bed. I began to bag them up to take them down to the mechanical room for his ride back to shore. After gathering them up, I headed to the stairs and to the lower level of the rig. When I arrived on the lower level, there was a man from the council, Carl, standing guard beside the door to the mechanical room. Freddy was banging on the door and begging for the man to let him out. He stood stone-faced, staring in my direction.
Tim, stop.
The man said to me.
Freddy has already been judged. We're just waiting on a boat. I know,
I said, gesturing toward the backpack full of my friend's belongings.
just wanted to drop his stuff off so he can take it back with him. I don't want him to leave with nothing. Just drop it there.
Carl said flatly.
I'll make sure he gets it before.
Suddenly the air was filled with agonized screams. You could always hear muffled yelling on the upper levels when someone was locked up awaiting their banishment. But the thick floor plating always made it inaudible. Up close, I could hear the fear in my friend's voice.
What the hell is that?
Freddy shouted.
Let me out of here! It's going to kill me! Open the damn door!
You need to leave.
Carl said, pointing toward the stairs.
Something is in there with him.
I shouted.
Let him out. This is how it works, Tim.
He spat.
If you don't want to join him, you'd better go.
I could see the keys to the room hanging from a ring on his belt. I'm not sure what came over me, but I threw the backpack at Carl's head and lunged forward for the keys. He was momentarily shocked, but quickly regained his composure and began to struggle. Landing 2 punches to the side of his head, he slid limply to the floor. I pulled the keys from his belt and unlocked the door. As the door creaked open, I began to call for Freddy, but the words died in my throat. Standing above my friend was a gangly creature covered in wet, scaly skin. Gill slits opened and closed on its neck, and purple eyes gazed at me from its bulbous head. As I made eye contact with it, the thing opened its massive jaws and hissed before grabbing Freddy's limp frame by the head. It turned toward an opening by the drill shaft and began to drag Freddy toward it. A crimson streak trailed behind them. Freddy's eyes were barely open as he lifted his hand toward me in a gesture for help. The creature's hand turned, and a dry snap echoed in the mechanical room before it threw Freddy's lifeless body through the hole. A clawed hand reached toward me, mimicking the same gesture as Freddy. The thing opened its mouth again and uttered what I can only describe as a hellish laugh. Finished with its taunt, it stepped back and fell through the hole and into the rolling waves below. I left that same night and got as far from the coast as I could. After a few days in a Houston shelter, I left the state. I live in Omaha now. Farmhand work is plentiful, and I managed to get a crackerbox apartment. The green pastures make me feel safe, but when I try to sleep at night, the roar of the ocean still echoes in my mind. I never told anyone what I saw. The authorities wouldn't believe me. Hell, maybe they knew. No one is worried about the homeless. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. We lost contact with the mainland over 3 weeks ago. Radio contact went out almost immediately when the ice moved in. None of the electrical systems work. Our helicopter won't start up. The men have taken to burning crude oil in barrels just to stay warm. No one has come to rescue us. We're going to die here. Not exactly what I expected when I took a job managing an oil rig in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. The recruiter sold me on the warm climate, high pay, and tranquil view. Now I'm shivering in the middle of a winter hellscape. 16 days ago, one of the roughnecks reported the first iceberg.
Sir, you need to come to see this.
He shouted over the radio.
Never seen anything like it.
I dropped my clipboard to the desk and left the comfort of my air-conditioned office. The day was a scorcher, probably around 95 degrees, but I hadn't checked the weather that morning. A warm wind from the Gulf swept across the platform and ruffled my shaggy mess of hair. A lot of men on the rig kept their hair close to the scalp, but mine was thinning, and I hadn't wanted to bring any more attention to it than I had to. Once I reached the observation desk, I saw a roughneck waving wildly. I picked up my pace and crossed the deck to stand beside the man. He handed me a set of binoculars and pointed into the distance.
Looks like an iceberg, sir.
He stammered.
An iceberg in the damn Gulf. My eyes gotta be playing tricks on me.
In disbelief, I held the binoculars to my eyes and peered in the distance. It was hard to make out at first, but as a high wave moved in the direction of the platform, my line of view became clear. There it was, massive and white, bobbing up and down smoothly in the choppy water. It was moving quickly in the direction of the rig. Son of a bitch, I muttered under my breath. How long ago did you see this?
It just kind of popped up,
The man said.
I've been scanning the horizon for the pickup tanker, and the damn thing just burst out of the water.
My mind reeled. I'd seen dozens of bizarre sights over the years. Abandoned ships floating in the waves, pods of whales sailing below the water near the support structure, flocks of seabirds so thick they blacked out the sun. A huge chunk of ice floating in 83-degree water was a first. Looks like it is heading directly toward us, I told the roughneck. Go inform the safety officers to expect an impact in about 15 minutes. It doesn't look large enough to cause any serious damage, but I want a maintenance crew ready to check for structural damage. The roughneck sprinted away from the observation deck, and I headed back to the office. I needed to call the sighting into the mainland and prepare for potential damage repair. Life on a rig was far from normal, but that was more than I had ever prepared myself for. As I reached my office and began to turn the knob, a cold breeze brushed the back of my neck, sending a chill down my spine. I flicked the light switch inside the door, but the room remained dark. After a few more tries, I gave up and headed to my desk. Picking up the radio mic, I held it to my mouth and thumbed in the button.
Delta rig to mainland comm. Delta rig to the mainland comm. We spotted an iceberg on our perimeter. Repeat, an iceberg is headed toward our rig. No damage expected, but requesting an emergency maintenance crew.
Silence. I repeated the message, but again received only silence in return. My eyes drifted down to the radio to see all of the interface lights dead and lifeless. My heart crept into my throat. In a panic, I pushed back from my desk and headed for the door. Just as I grasped the knob, the platform shook violently beneath my feet. The iceberg had hit, much harder than I had expected. Only moments after the platform settled, 2 more reverberating shocks slammed into the rig. Running as hard as I could, I climbed to the top of the observation deck. A cluster of men were gathered there looking into the distance. I was about to ask them what had happened, but I looked into the distance too and saw it for myself. Dozens of icebergs were drifting in the water around us. Maybe hundreds. The horizon was a wall of steel-gray clouds lumbering in our direction. A fierce wind scraped against my cheeks. Cold, almost freezing. The snow came later that night. Gentle flurries at first, almost a whimsical sight. Dozens of crewmen stood on the deck and watched the soft white flecks fall to the deck. It wasn't long before the flurries gave way to a blinding storm. In our confusion, most of the crew hadn't noticed the electricity stopped working. The head of maintenance found me on the deck and informed me all of our systems had shut down. When I asked why the backup generators hadn't been initiated, all he could do was shrug. His crew was working on it, but so far they had no luck. I found our pilot on the helicopter pad and instructed him to fire up the bird and head inland for help. With great fear in his eyes, he told me that multiple attempts to get it started had failed. We were stranded. Over the coming days, the snow piled in massive heaps across the deck. None of the crew had packed warm clothing and huddled under blankets in the crew barracks, shivering and watery-eyed. There was no heating system on the rig. Even if there was, the damn thing wouldn't have worked anyway. Nothing did. Violent quakes had shaken the platform for days before unexpectedly ceasing. The falling snow made it impossible to see the ocean below, but most assumed the icebergs had passed us by. At first, I believed this too, but another crewman dashed my hopes. I was sitting at my desk, wrapped in blankets and smoking a cigarette, when the old-timer pushed his way into the office. Snow and the biting wind blew in behind him before he slammed the door. There was a dry cracking noise coming from outside.
Do you hear that?
He asked, almost devoid of emotion.
The crackling and slamming noises?
I nodded.
Sea ice.
He spat.
I worked on a fishing boat in the Bering Sea for a few years. We can't see it, but that is the sound of great slabs of sea ice breaking against each other.
Food ran out a few days ago. We were due a restock shipment 2 weeks ago. I melt the snow to drink, but my stomach constantly aches with hunger pains. There aren't many of us left anyway. A few men jumped over the side soon after this started. We lost dozens to hypothermia. A handful died in a fire when a burning barrel of crude oil they were using to keep warm tipped over in their barrack, burnt them alive. Some of the men still seem strong. No complaints of rumbling bellies, but their faces are blank, absent of any emotion. I have my suspicions, but what could I do about it? My God, I want to live, but I couldn't. One of the crewmen told me this morning they have seen things flying through the heavy drifts of snow. I haven't seen them myself, but occasionally I think I can hear something land in the thick snow above my office. The dull sound of footsteps echoed in the room, but then they vanished. When the man left my office, I thought I could hear a scream pierce through the howling winds outside the door. I looked out, but no one was there. Only the pelting white globs of God-forsaken snow. These personal entries recorded by Anonymous are intended for research purposes only. Entries unrelated to the event have been removed. All materials found here are the sole property of Eventide Petroleum and are not authorized for reproduction. If any unauthorized person or persons find themselves in possession of these documents, please contact the corporate office for a financial reward. August 10th, 2021. The jumpers always looked so happy as they marched to their death. You could see their faces clearly from the dozens of security cameras on the deck. Satisfied smiles covered their faces as they bounded carelessly toward the edge of the platform. We've installed a higher railing system around the edges, but it only made them work harder to get over the top. Before they jump, their arms extend out as though they expect something to come from the sky and scoop them up like a mother would pick up a small child. After 1 or 2 minutes of holding their crucifixion-like pose, they fall forward and sail through the air until they make an impact with the churning water below. Suicides on oil rigs aren't common, but they aren't unheard of either. The rate for oil extraction workers is near twice the percentage of males in the general population. At least, that's what I read when I started researching this job. From what I've seen, it is drastically higher here. During my first month on the rig, I watched 2 men plummet to their death from the control room. Braxton and Garvin were their names. Happy guys as far as I could tell. Wife, kids, and nice houses to get back to after their rotations.
Best job in the world.
Braxton had told me the day we met. He pointed a finger out toward the endless blue waves that spread as far as we could see.
No better view for that matter.
It's almost like the ocean sings to you every night, like it never wants you to leave. He never did leave. 20 days after we met, Earl Braxton and Jimmy Gavin leapt over the side of the rig during the night shift. Their bodies were never recovered. August 28th, 2021. We've lost 3 more men since I last had a chance to write. Derek Overton had only been on the rig for 6 days. Young guy, couldn't have been more than 22. It was his first offshore job, and he had seemed so excited. He was a hard worker too. "You ever hear anything weird when you're working out on the platform?" he asked me one day. "Sounds like there's someone out in a boat singing." "No," I replied. "I work down in control and keep an eye on the vital systems. Don't get outside as much as I should." "I'm probably just hearing things. Tried to ask a few of the other workers up top, but I guess they're too busy to talk. A few of them told me I should wear earplugs, but I don't know. The sound of the waves is soothing. The singing noise too. I kind of enjoy it." That was 2 days before he jumped. Our night shift crew wasn't fast enough to stop him. They never are. Doyle Hargrove was an old-timer. He worked on Eventide rigs for over 30 years. According to the duty roster, he was due to rotate home next week. His psychological evaluation was top-notch. No history of mental illness. All of his crew said nothing seemed out of place. If anything, he seemed happier than he had in months. Just the same, Doyle threw himself over the side of the rig during the night shift. The third death wasn't a jumper. One of the motor hands, Alvy Spencer, was found standing near the edge of the platform, arms outstretched, looking toward the sky. 2 roughnecks on the night shift saw him and managed to drag him back from the edge before he scaled the railing to fall into the drink. Alvy fought them tooth and nail as they pulled him toward the barracks. A few other men heard the commotion and came running to aid in the rescue. The motor hand punched and kicked everyone around him and scrambled to find a grip on the rig floor as they pulled him toward the bulkhead. The whole time he was just screaming the same thing over and over. "Let me go! It's so beautiful! Just let me go!" Unsure of what to do, the rig manager had them secure Alvy in an empty storage room while he radioed the mainland crew. They informed us they would send a helicopter to retrieve Alvy and take him in for a mental health evaluation. We were all relieved to have finally saved one, but the celebration came too early. When we opened the storage room, Alvy Spencer swung from his belt, secured to a pipe. Poor bastard. Thought we'd managed to save one. September 20th, 2021. Shit just keeps getting more and more strange around here. There have been no more jumpers, which is great, but corporate has made some odd changes. Our old rig manager was replaced with some suit from corporate. He doesn't seem to have much experience in the field. Has a strange way about him. Made a lot of changes too. Everyone who works outdoors on the rig has to wear earplugs during their entire shift. No exceptions. It wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's difficult to call someone over the loudspeakers with a wad of foam in their ears. Men have to work in 2-man teams now, regardless of their position. If one goes to the bathroom, the other goes with them. They eat together, shower together. The only time you are away from them is when you go to bed. You even have to fill out a daily observation report about your partner. The questions are weird. You figure it would be a productivity thing, but it isn't like that at all. Has your partner exhibited any odd behavior? Does your partner stare off into the distance frequently? Does your partner seem to hum or sing as they work? Have you noticed your partner spending too much time near the edge of the platform? There are also tons of signs posted everywhere on the rig saying we should report any strange thoughts or compulsions to our supervisor. No telling what kind of weird stuff those poor bastards are hearing from the crew. It's almost an open invitation for bad jokes. I'm not sure what the hell is going on out here, but it may be time for a job change. My rotation is up on November 1st. It can't get here soon enough. October 17th, 2021. Working up on the deck has been a nice change of pace. We've been short on roughnecks lately, and I accepted a pay bump to help out with grunt work. Steve, my partner, doesn't follow me around too much, which has been nice. We're both old-timers, so it wasn't too hard to work out an agreement to skirt a few of the new corporate rules. Those damn earplugs annoyed me too much, so mostly I just leave them out. None of the young bucks on the crew say anything about it. Most of them have started keeping theirs out too. Not hard to manage. The suits from corporate stay inside in the air conditioning. Gives us a free run of the place. I'm more relaxed than I've been in months. Braxton was right. The ocean does sing to you. Sometimes I close my eyes and it almost sounds like a woman. I can almost see her, down below the rig, floating between the white caps. She's beautiful. It's like she's singing just for me. October 21st, 2021. Steve jumped from the platform yesterday. We were doing a security check on the railing system around the edge of the platform. They had been hastily installed as the incidents increased and the material wasn't holding up well against the salty sea spray. Bad news for the maintenance crew.
Hey!
Steve said to me as I was examining the bolts fastening the railing to the deck. I looked toward him and saw him pointing into the ocean.
Look out there! Looks like a damn lady swimming in the water.
It's 15 miles to shore and there isn't a boat in sight, Steve. Your eyes are playing tricks on you.
No!
He stated.
Take a look for yourself. She's waving at us. I think I can hear her singing.
I stood up and looked in the direction he pointed. At first, I couldn't see anything, just the rolling blue waves. Then I saw her. Pale skin, dark hair, slender frame. She was bobbing up and down in the water. A long, thin arm waved above her head. She was too far away to make out any details of her face, but I couldn't help but think she would be the most beautiful woman I'd seen if I were a bit closer. A strange thought to have when you see a woman floating miles from the shore, but it haunted my mind.
We've got to get someone out there to help,
Steve said.
Run up to the office and tell the rig manager we need to get out there to her.
I ran as quickly as I could to the office and threw the door open like a bull in a china shop. It startled the men inside. Gasping for air, I told them there was a woman in the water and told them to follow me. We charged out of the office in the direction of Steve. By the time we returned, Steve was standing on top of the railing, arms outstretched. We shouted his name and ran toward him, but he never turned his head or acknowledged us. Just as we reached the bottom of the railing and began to climb up to retrieve him, he tilted over the edge and began to sail down. As Steve passed in front of my face, I caught a glimpse of his serene smile. October 30th, 2021. The rescue crew never found Steve or the woman we saw in the water. I feel like I'm going mad. The music still fills my ears as I sit here on my bunk. Layers of steel walls and bulkheads can't drown it out. It's maddening, but oddly beautiful. I want it to stop, but I also don't. It would probably sound so much better if I could get a bit closer to it. I wonder if the woman Steve and I saw is the one singing. I wonder if she is as beautiful as I think she is. Maybe she's still down there. She just needs help. I should help her. I'm going to see if I can spot her. I'll just stand by the rail for a little while, just for a minute. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Dr. Nicely.
The red phone on my desk began to ring around noon the day the plant burned to the ground. I had worked as head of security for Caverna Cattle Processing for half a decade, and it had never rung. My heart dropped as I considered the loss of life that would follow the metallic jingling. I picked it up and held it to my ear. "Code red?" I asked, voice shaking.
Confirmed,
Said a man from the other end.
Follow Tier 5 protocol. This is a total loss. Start the process immediately.
The line went dead. I swallowed hard and sat the phone carefully back into the cradle. Not that it mattered. It would be a charred pile of plastic before the day was out. I lifted the plexiglass cover on the wall above my desk and pushed the yellow button labeled Slaughterhouse. A secondary red button flashed below it. Sweat poured down my face as doubt swept through my mind. I wanted to think it wasn't too late, but I knew it was. I pushed the flashing red button to finalize the operation. The slaughterhouse workers were all dead anyway. Looking at the security monitors for the slaughterhouse, I could see the staff scrambling toward the doors. As soon as I hit the secondary button, the magnetic locks engaged, and there would be a mechanical voice playing through the overhead speakers announcing the lockdown. It would tell some soothing lie that normal operations would resume any moment, but they knew better. In a dead-end town like this, people flocked to Caverna for decent pay and dependable hours. A few years in, and most of them even accepted the twisted nature of what we actually did. Most of them probably lied and told themselves nothing bad could really happen. For a few brief moments, before they died, they understood it had all been a comforting lie. I turned back to my computer and entered the command to announce the facility evacuation for all of the other floors. Scanning the bank of monitors, I could see the other workers cease their duties and begin to move in an orderly fashion for the nearest exit. The alert sounded like a fire alarm, so they would move a safe distance away from the building before Tier 5 protocol finished. The waves of other workers were still marching out, but I turned my head back to the bank of slaughterhouse monitors. In the brief moments I had looked away, nearly a third of the cameras had gone offline. I knew the things were destructive, but I had no idea how quickly they had moved or how they had escaped containment. On one of the screens, a horrible image flickered lifelessly. In front of one of the exit doors, there was a pile of people. Parts of them, anyway. I had never been more grateful that the Caverna cattle processing plant owners had never transitioned the old cameras to color. My imagination made the scene bad enough. I turned back toward the other monitors to see a few slow movers still shuffling around inside the plant. There wasn't much time left before I would have to enter the final protocol command. My face was burning with anger at the stragglers. I picked up the system-wide mic on my desk and held it to my mouth.
Get the hell out!
I shouted.
The building is on fire, and I can't leave the security booth until the place is cleared!
The last few slow-moving employees unexpectedly picked up their pace and moved toward the exits. I breathed a sigh of relief as my eyes darted from monitor to monitor. All of the floors, other than the slaughterhouse, were clear. I turned to the row of buttons and pushed the yellow and red sequences to finalize the order. Clicks reverberated through the facility as the magnetic locks engaged. The things were trapped inside, and the hidden self-destruct system would engage in just a few moments. Stealing one more look back at the slaughterhouse monitors, I finally saw the things. Bovine heads extended from their serpentine necks. They waved side to side, bobbing above their arachnoid bodies. Most of them had 8 eyes, but a few had 10 or more. The hooves came to a sharp point. Bloated udders randomly spotted their body, dripping some liquid too thick to be milk. Gore dripped from their slack mouths. They skittered across the slaughterhouse floor, tracking down the last few survivors. Every few moments, another camera would go offline. I never understood why they destroyed the cameras. Did they know I was watching them? Could they think? Were they more than just some monstrosity the Caverna Cattle Processing Company had developed to cut costs? The damn things grew too rapidly. They were too dangerous. Surely Caverna knew it. Sure, they tasted like beef, but I couldn't help but be sickened by the monstrosities that had overwhelmed the slaughterhouse floor. Dozens of people inside were dead, all in the name of higher profit. My computer monitor began to flash rapidly, counting down the moments until the incendiary devices would cause the plant to erupt in flames. That was the protocol. Genetically engineer monsters that taste like beef. If they break containment, destroy the plant and any staff trapped inside. Insurance would pay to rebuild in a new town. The families would get a meager payout. Caverna would just move on, open a new plant, breed more creatures. Next time you're at the grocery store, skip the Caverna meats section. It may be a price you like, but you get what you pay. Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. The screen of my tablet danced with 1,000 different sequences that I didn't understand. It didn't matter anyway. All of the data presented on the screen wasn't for me to check anyway. technological mumbo jumbo, all of it. The only thing I cared about was the little green bar that was filling up at the bottom. 82% complete. It would have been my last job for a month before I flew home for some rest and relaxation. I had worked for Midwest Structural Security for a decade, and it was the cushiest gig I ever had. Fallout shelters weren't exactly all the rage, but they were becoming more common with every passing year. Natural disasters used to be our bread and butter, but it seemed like the world was falling to shit, politically speaking. Wealthy folks couldn't get enough of our underground, home away from home setups. That inspection was my third one that week. A crew would spend months, sometimes even years, carefully building the state-of-the-art bunkers. After they were finished, I would show up and do the final check. Full inspection, top to bottom. No system went unnoticed. My final step before the official sign-off on a job site was to hook my tablet up to the main computer and run a final diagnostic check. Every mechanical and computer-controlled system would go through an intense diagnostic and produce a finalized report. Easy money, if not a bit time-consuming. I didn't mind, though. The bunkers were more luxurious than any place I had ever lived. Most were identical in structure, but the interior design was picked out by the owners. Their own special little touch, I guess. Knowing it was my last site before vacation, it seemed like the tablet diagnostic was running slower than ever. I hadn't looked at the screen in over 5 minutes, but when I looked again, it had only moved up 1%. The oversized feather couch in the bunker's living room area was comfortable, though. It had crossed my mind to set an alarm on my cell phone and take a quick snooze. I was reaching into my pocket to pull out my phone when a thick peppering of concrete erupted, hitting the side of my face. The crumbling of stone and squeal of rebar filled the inside of the concrete box as I sprung from the couch. My tablet screen was flashing red, and I began to run for the exit hatch. The PA system above roared to life.
Warning, warning. Unexpected breach detected. Emergency lockdown mode commencing. Stand clear of all exits. Bulkheads will secure in 5 seconds.
As I listened to the announcement, I kept running toward the exit hatch. There was no chance I would make it, but my legs continued pumping nonetheless. My mind was still reeling as I tried to figure out what the hell had caused the structural damage to the barrier wall. I was just in time to watch the damn thing seal shut. The hydraulic door system hissed and groaned as the heavy steel plate shifted into place. A dull thud and small shock passed through the bunker as the barrier settled into its frame. Having accepted that I was trapped inside the bunker, I pulled my phone from my pocket to make contact with someone from the company. The unexplained structural failure needed to be reported, and someone needed to come to perform an emergency override to get me out. It would take hours for me to do from the inside, and there was no way of telling if the structure was preparing for collapse. I looked at my phone. No reception. A moment of panic settled in before I came to my senses. Each one of the bunkers we constructed came with a satellite phone communication system. I began to walk down the cement steps into the main area to check the link up when another explosion of cement sprayed just a few feet ahead of me, followed by what felt like an earthquake. My feet shook beneath me, and I tumbled down the last few steps. I threw my arms out in front of me, but it was too late. All of my weight came crashing down, causing the side of my head to slam against the thin carpet covering the cement floor. My vision wavered, and everything went black. I'm not sure how long I was out, but when I came to, chunks of concrete and twisted lines of rebar were scattered across the floor. Something was scraping across the concrete foundation, mimicking the sound of nails on a chalkboard. I lifted my head to find the source of the noise and nearly pissed my pants when I saw it. Bright rays of sunlight were piercing through a hole in the 4-foot-thick wall. Dirt and crumbled concrete were sliding in from the opening, pushed by an enormous white hand. From the tip of the talons to the bend of the wrist, it had the texture of porous bone. Deep dimples in the ivory claw were filled with dirt. The massive hand scratched at the floor, feeling around as though it were a bear reaching into a log, searching for an easy meal. In my daze, I managed to push myself back a few feet just as one of the claws sank deeply into the concrete where I had been only moments before. A deep wound in the concrete trailed back to the hole as the colossal hand pulled itself out. The ground rumbled as something unimaginably massive moved overhead. The quakes gradually grew less in intensity before vanishing altogether. I remained in the bunker for hours after that, afraid that the thing was outside. Maybe it was just waiting to see if I came out. My stomach turned with the thought of seeing what was on the other end of that grotesque hand. The daylight drifted into twilight, and still, I sat frozen in the same spot. My stomach growled for food, yet nothing could pry me away. It wasn't until the next morning when sunlight began to pour in through the shaft before I finally decided to make my escape. I clambered up through the hole the thing had gouged into the bunker and poked my head above ground level. My truck was ripped to shreds and scattered around the field. A line of trenches were grooved into the ground as far as my eyes could see. Some hellish trail left by whatever nightmare creature had burrowed its way in. I guess those bunkers couldn't keep everything out. I woke up to my wife sobbing gently in the bed beside me. Our tiny passenger cabin on the cruise liner acted like an echo chamber, turning her gentle weeping into echoed cries. When I opened my eyes, the soft light from under the door illuminated the room in a light that sent thin shadows crawling up the walls. My eyes focused in the darkness to see Nancy sitting up in bed. She was clutching the phone from our bedside table in her hands. A soft voice was speaking through the earpiece, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. "Nancy," I said in a gentle tone, "is everything all right?"
I don't know, Marvin.
She replied.
I'm scared.
"Who was on the phone?" I asked, pushing myself up into a sitting position.
Something wrong with the kids back home?
Nancy's muffled crying morphed into defined wails when I mentioned the children. That cruise was the first trip we'd taken without the kids. It was our 10th anniversary celebration, and we decided to make it just the two of us. I'm glad we didn't bring them. Who knows if they would have made it back home.
Can you tell me what's wrong, sweetie?
I asked again. She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing but mournful sounds came out. I tried to give her a minute to collect herself, but her composure didn't return. Gently, I pulled the phone from her hand and held it to my ear.
This is the Sea Lantern Cruise Line Information Center. We regret to inform you that multiple cases of norovirus have been reported aboard the ship. At this time, we will be instituting a lockdown measure to slow the spread of the infection. All passengers are to remain in their rooms until inspected by SLCL medical personnel. If you are suffering from vomiting, diarrhea, or cramping, please report this to medical staff during your checkup. You will be reimbursed for any and all ports of call canceled due to this unfortunate event. Thank you for choosing Sea Lantern Cruise Lines. You may hang up now. This message will play on a loop. This is Sea Lantern Cruise Line.
I leaned across Nancy and sat the phone back on the hook. Pulling her close, I squeezed her tightly to my side and felt her body shudder. She clutched my leg, and I could feel her nails begin to sink into my skin.
Easy, Nancy,
I proclaimed as I reached down to check if she had broken my skin.
What has you so worked up? Norovirus is no big deal.
Nancy sat up and turned her head toward me. Even in the dim light, I could see the fear in her eyes. Her jaw quivered as she tried to find her voice.
No, it isn't a big deal, Marvin.
She replied shakily.
We went on a cruise with the kids 2 years back. There was a big outbreak of norovirus then, too. The ship didn't go on lockdown.
I ran my hands through my hair. She was right. The captain had made a few announcements over the loudspeaker of the ship, but life had gone on as normal. A few of the onboard bars and restaurants had closed, but otherwise, there hadn't been a change.
We were on a different line that time,
I said in an attempt to soothe her fears. My tone was probably unconvincing, as my mind began to untangle the troubled thoughts creeping around inside.
It's probably just a company policy. Let's try and get some sleep before some rent-a-doc comes to knock on the door and take our temperature.
Nancy muttered in agreement and put her head back on her pillow. I stretched myself back out on the too small bed and pulled the covers up to my shoulder. The steady hum of the engine lulled us both back to sleep. I woke again to the sound of muffled screams. My pulse quickened as I jolted up in the bed. Sitting stone still, I listened intently for another outburst, but none came. Only the constant hum of the massive engines. It had been something in my dream, I thought to myself, and settled back down into the bed again. Nancy was snoring peacefully beside me, and I placed my hand on her back. She shifted her body as she shrugged the blanket off of her shoulder. The rise and fall of her back as she breathed helped to slow the panicked thumps from my heart. Sympathy panic, Marvin. That's all it is. Nancy got a little worried earlier and spooked you too. Calm down and go back to bed. This vacation will be gone before you know it. Just as I was settling in, I heard someone knocking heavily on a cabin door in the hall, followed by a loud voice. Through the door, I couldn't quite hear what they were saying. It was the medical team, I thought, making rounds to put all of this silly business behind us. I gently stood from the bed and crept to the door, placing my ear against the cold wood. The voice of two men filled the hallway.
One soul lost and one awaiting treatment.
Said the first man. The sound of flipping pages followed.
Male and female. David and Joyce Carmichaels. I'll call for the removal team.
Said the second man.
Which one needs treatment? The man or the woman? The man.
The first one replied.
He's pretty weak.
I could hear one of the men walk back into the cabin before a single gunshot rang out. I fell onto the floor in shock.
Treatment complete,
said man number 2.
Last cabin on this floor. Looks like Marvin and Nancy Compton. Pop the door.
White noise filled my ears as I heard a plastic keycard slap against the magnetic lock of our door. The heavy wooden barrier pushed in and light flooded through the opening. Two men dressed in hazmat suits stood in front of me. The man in the rear had a gun.
Good evening, Mr. Compton,
said the first man.
Are you or your wife feeling ill?
A medical team wearing the same hazmat suits as the two men came to our room and examined us. It seemed to shock them to find us in perfect health, terrified as we were. They had us put on 2 hazmat suits and raced us to the elevator. 2 men escorted us down the main hallway and through the empty lobby and onto the main deck. We didn't see a single soul other than the medical team. No matter how many questions we asked, they remained silent. We approached a helicopter that sat idling on the deck. Lounge chairs and white towels sat scattered all around. The team pushed us into the chopper where we belted up and lifted off into the sky. Nancy clung to me more tightly than she ever had before. As we moved over the side of the ship, it finally made sense why we hadn't seen anyone else. On the deck were bright white body bags, thousands of them. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Dr. Nicely.
Are you seeing this?
Wilson asked as he pressed his headphones closer to his ears. We were sitting in the claustrophobic, damp sonar room, searching for any signs of movement out in the deep oceans surrounding us. A blip had appeared on our sonar, notifying us of a rapidly moving object approaching from 15 nautical miles away. It was large, and based solely on its size alone, I doubted it could be a living organism. On the other hand, its speed was far too quick to be an enemy or allied submarine. Silence fell upon the rest of the crew as the mysterious object closed in on our location. We were working on identifying it, trying to figure out if it was worth waking our captain from his well-earned slumber.
The audio signature doesn't match anything I've ever heard before. It's bizarre,
Wilson said. Even though our hydrophones marked the very peak of military hardware, able to detect feeding shrimp off the bottom of the ocean miles away, they couldn't recognize this noise. Wilson sat frozen in his chair, desperately trying to put his 3 decades worth of experience to the test. But it was to no avail. And if Wilson couldn't figure it out, then no one could.
It's getting closer,
I mumbled before reading out the object's constantly changing location.
How is this possible? It has to be another submarine. Russian, maybe Japanese,
Wilson suggested.
Better hope for the latter. We're not supposed to be in this region,
I responded. Our executive officer, Henderson, had already assessed the situation and was worried enough to alert Captain Banks. We needed his permission to initiate stealth protocols, given that we hadn't the faintest idea what we were facing. Best case scenario, it was a system malfunction. Worst case, an enemy vessel. Even though full-out combat was unlikely, our presence in hostile territory just might be enough to start an international incident.
Something's not right here. It's too large,
I repeated. Though the scans weren't always accurate, we estimated the object to be 300 meters in length, almost twice as long as our largest submarines.
Can't be,
Wilson insisted.
Even the Typhoon-class vessels aren't that big.
But its size wasn't what worried me the most, but rather the impossible depth and speed it traveled at. We were pushing the boundaries at almost 500 meters, but the detected object was moving at twice our depth and 3 times our cruising speed. If I didn't know better, I would have called it an impossible feat. The sound it produced was far too loud for a stealth vessel, but obscure enough to avoid automatic detection. It was akin to a whale's mating call, but produced a far deeper pitch, pulsating with a repeating rhythm. Paradoxically, the sound appeared natural, yet all too foreign. Only when I listened to it for a good 15 minutes did I realize that it looped. Almost like a song played on repeat, as if someone was sending a message desperate to be read.
I don't like this,
Wilson said.
We need to leave.
Though his impulse to escape resonated with the rest of us, it was a decision that could only be made by Captain Banks himself. But for such a decision to even be considered, we'd need the support of an executive officer. Our officer without authority still seemed unfazed by the approaching threat. I almost let out a sigh of relief as I felt the submarine decelerate. The engines fell silent, and the lights dimmed. It was clear that we'd been ordered to stop, if only to remain undetectable from whatever was heading our way. Captain Banks entered the sonar room shortly after, taking the XO to the side to get briefed on the situation. Due to the uncertain nature of the situation, the captain had decided to stay put as we waited for the object to pass beneath us. Regardless of what exactly it was, we couldn't afford to take any risk, and at the depth it was traveling, we should have been in the clear. All the while, I kept calling out the object's position, trying to hide the fear building up within me.
2,000 meters,
I called out. The thing was moving closer, ascending from the depths as it approached us. As it got closer, the same bizarre rhythm increased in intensity.
1,500,
I continued. The thing was moving faster than any underwater vessel known to man, surpassing the quickest animals on the planet despite its terrifying size.
1,000.
While it had moved to shallower waters, it was still a couple of 100 meters below us. There was still hope, albeit with a dangerously narrow margin.
500.
That's when I noticed its speed changing. To our collective horror, it started slowing down, still moving at impressive speeds, but seemingly affected by our presence.
300.
Whatever we were about to face, it knew where we were.
200.
Pearls of sweat formed on my forehead. In a few seconds, it would be straight under us. The captain ordered all personnel to report to their designated stations and to prepare for a possible battle.
100.
Then it halted directly beneath us, just 100 meters deeper than our position. The crew fell silent, and the audio we'd picked up suddenly ceased. If not for our sonar readings confirming its location, it might as well not have existed. A minute passed as we waited for something to happen. I wondered if a preemptive attack might have been our best shot at survival. But short of dropping a ton of mines on the thing, we had few means with which to fight something more than twice our size. Then I wondered what it looked like. But even with cameras on the underbelly of our vessel, there wouldn't have been enough light to penetrate the darkness at our current depth. We were essentially blind, except for a dot on our radar, showing little more than the size of our stalker. 5 uncontrollable minutes passed, which felt like an eternity. And there was nothing we could do, except to wait for something, anything to happen. Then, as abruptly as silence had fallen upon us, it was shattered with an ungodly shriek originating from directly below us. With the ungodly sound, we also detected sudden, rapid movement, shooting up towards us at impossible speeds.
Brace for impact!
Captain Banks let out, far too late for anyone to get to safety. Loud alarms howled through our ship as it violently shook from the impact. Those not firmly locked to their seats were flung around like clothes inside a dryer. With that single crash, half a dozen men had their backs and necks broken. We detected another horrific shriek, breaking its prior rhythm with constantly lowering pitch. With it, loud clunks resonated through the room. A pressure wave shot through our sector, popping our ears as it passed.
Hull breach in the control room!
Wilson yelled. Before rushing to repair the damage, we attempted to reach the crew further back via radio. But with power intermittently cutting out and possible fatalities, we had no way of assessing the situation. In a state of shock, I could do little but wait for orders and pray that my training kicked in. But orders would not come, as the captain was lying unconscious in a corner.
Captain!
Wilson called as he rushed to his aid. Just from his awkward position, we could tell that the captain had died on impact. Without Banks in charge, the role fell to the executive officer.
Wilson, Peterson, with me to the control room.
Henderson commanded with as much confidence as he could muster. The control room was on the same floor, a bit further back on the submarine. The door was kept closed, but luckily it hadn't been locked due to the crash. Wilson entered first, letting me follow behind him. Henderson came in last only to assess the damage before taking control of the rest of the ship. While calling for backup was essential, stabilizing the vessel was our main priority before making a swift escape to the surface. Before us lay 5 crewmen, dead in 3 feet of water. Several beams shot into the room at high pressures, leaving us with limited time to seal them off. Still, if we were able to at least patch the damage up, the control room would be left semi-functional. We stepped over our dead friends, hurrying to fix the damage. Only then did my training kick in, allowing us to quickly stop the heavy flow of water.
Peterson, you hearing this?
Wilson asked once the last drop of water had entered the ship. I readied my ears, and just beneath the howling alarm, we could hear the faint sound of metal settling under pressure. Since we hadn't yet reached critical depths, I could only assume that whatever had attacked us was holding on in an attempt to crush us.
How is it doing that?
I asked, not really expecting a response.
I don't know, but we better not stick around for an answer.
Wilson shot back as he tried to get the comms working.
Hello, do you copy?
He asked as the radio came to life in a static mess.
This is Leading Petty Officer Ian Wilson, reporting from the control room. Please respond.
He was trying to contact the crew at the torpedo room, but none responded. Either they had perished during the first attack, or the station had flooded beyond the point of usefulness. Either way, with the monstrosity outside trying to crush the sub, we had to fight back with any means possible. We rushed back to the sonar room where Henderson had gathered the remaining survivors. He had shared our train of thought and had sent a team to assess and repair any damage done to the torpedo tubes. What remained in the rest of the submarine was a skeleton crew ready to fix any hull breaches.
As long as the creature is latched onto us, we can't launch any torpedoes without risking irreparable damage to the submarine,
Wilson argued.
Do you have any other suggestions? Either we fight back, or this monstrosity pulls us down to the abyss,
Henderson said.
Do we even know what the thing is, or what it looks like?
I asked, while simultaneously trying to come up with an escape plan.
We got some photos. Can't tell you much, except for the fact that it's biological,
Henderson explained.
Good,
Wilson chimed in.
That means it can bleed. Wait a minute. What if we don't arm the torpedoes?
I suggested.
The impact might be enough to hurt the bastard. probably won't kill it, but might force it to let go. Given that it's hanging directly onto our torpedo ports,
Henderson said.
it's the only chance we have.
He nodded in agreement, telling us to personally relay the information to the attack crew in lieu of functioning comms. Wilson already stood ready by the ladder, prepared to dive down into the bowels of our submarine and fight whatever threat we faced.
Help isn't coming,
Henderson explained.
which means we have the luxury of firing at will without being questioned by high command.
With that, we headed downstairs towards the torpedo bay. The bow was filled with water that went waist high. Half a dozen bodies littered the way. Most had been killed by the creature's first impact, while others had been pinned to the floor under various pieces of debris, forced to drown in a few feet of water with no help in sight. A handful of crewmen had gathered by the torpedoes. They'd already sealed any leaks, but the water pumps would need more attention before being functional. Still, the torpedo tubes were above water, remaining operational.
Disarm the torpedoes.
I ordered.
Disarm them? We want to kill the bastard.
One of them responded.
The torpedoes shoot out at 100 knots. While it won't kill the creature, it might cause it to let go instead of killing us all in the process.
I explained. The men glanced at each other, relieved that their suicide mission had turned to one with a faint glimmer of hope. They redirected their attention back at me, nodded in agreement, before proceeding to disarm the torpedoes. It would only take a minute, rendering them little more than metal chunks to be shot at a creature strong enough to crush us underneath its own weight. It was a futile plan, but the only one we had. We rapidly loaded up the 6 functioning torpedo tubes and prepared to fire. We just had to pray that some of them would hit the attacker at a reasonable speed, hopefully hard enough to make it let go.
Fire!
Wilson demanded with a raised hand. As demanded, the torpedo operators initiated a barrage of non-explosive warheads. From the 6 loaded, only 4 whirred to life, launching their content out into the dark ocean before us. Most seemed to miss the mark, floating harmlessly into the open waters. But a couple hit, each causing the monstrosity to slip slightly off the submarine, letting out agonized yells.
It worked!
Wilson let out.
Again!
At unparalleled speeds, the crew mounted the torpedo tubes once more, even doing most of the work manually. It was an impressive sight. Wilson ordered another barrage, this time only loading up the functional tubes. 4 torpedoes were shot at the creature. It winced in pain, finally letting go of our submarine. It shook as we fell free from its grasp, but we weren't yet free from danger. We had to deter the monster from attacking for a second time, but that time with proper firepower.
Prepare to fire live torpedoes!
Wilson ordered. Another barrage of 4 torpedoes were loaded, that time filled with actual explosives. I called Henderson over the radio to ask for exact locations, praying that the comms were back up and running. With our own computers barely functional, we had to rely on our fresh captain's instructions for a successful hit.
LOD James Peterson here. We've armed the torpedoes. We need the thing's exact location to get a hit. Do you copy?
It's retreating into the deep, 50 meters directly below our position. Fire at will.
Henderson said on the other end. I relayed the instructions, and Wilson gave permission to fire the load. A few seconds passed between the torpedoes leaving the tubes, before we had 2 confirmed impacts, only noticed by shockwaves reverberating through the ship. It had been a successful attack, and our ship was finally free of the monster's grasp. The crew let out a few tired cheers, relieved to be alive, but horrified by the loss of so many crewmen. Exhausted, we took the majority of the crew back to Henderson, who'd moved his team further back to the control room. But what greeted us were not relieved faces, but ones filled with utter panic. People were scrambling around, desperately trying to fix damage I couldn't see.
The nuclear reactor is severely damaged,
Henderson said meekly.
If we don't fix it, we're going to suffer a meltdown within the next few hours.
With the nuclear reactor located in the dead center of the submarine, we had several access points. But with the reactor suffering a meltdown, we couldn't safely enter from any of them. Running the backup engine would keep the submarine running, but it wouldn't buy us enough time to return to shore for emergency repairs. We would have to deal with it ourselves or risk the agonizing death of every man on board. Under normal circumstances, its thick walls protected the crew from catastrophic radiation poisoning. But during a meltdown, the released radiation would reach 1/4 of that measured after the incident at the Fukushima power plant.
How much time do we have?
I asked.
2 hours, maybe less.
Henderson said.
So, we fixed the damn thing.
Wilson suggested. His statement froze us in place for a moment. It was the most reasonable solution, but it came at catastrophic sacrifice for the poor bastard who took the task upon himself.
Whoever goes inside the reactor is going to die. You do realize this?
Henderson asked.
And if no one goes, we all die. I'll do it then.
Henderson said, his face pale as a sheet.
No, you won't. This ship needs a captain. You're not allowed to sacrifice yourself. Besides, I'm probably the only sucker left on this boat alive that has actually dealt with nuclear reactors up close,
Wilson explained. There were no words needed. We all knew Wilson had provided the only plausible solution. Like the Marine he was willing to give his life if it meant the rest of us could live. Either way, if nothing was done, we'd be killed by radiation or by the monstrosity from the depths returning for seconds. I escorted Wilson towards the nuclear reactor, ready to do whatever I could as he attempted to repair the damage. There were radiation shields aboard the sub, but they do little to negate the massive dosage of radiation Wilson would absorb as soon as he entered the reactor.
It doesn't have to be you,
I argued as we got close, knowing full well that no one else could repair the damage before we suffered a total meltdown. He ignored me and got suited up for the mission. While it wouldn't save him, it might buy him a few extra minutes to work on the reactor.
I ain't got nothing to say. I'm just doing my duty. No family to say goodbye to. Nothing back on the mainland waiting for me. This was always where I'd end up, kid. Just let me do this one thing.
Without further hesitation, Wilson entered the reactor room. I stood outside, watching him through cameras placed on the inside. They were meant to give a safe view of the reactor to determine the damage before entering. But most of the time, the disruption wasn't visible to the naked eye. Yet, Wilson headed straight for the problem and set to work. It would take about 10 minutes for the symptoms to set in, at which point death would follow shortly after. Just the act of opening the door had exposed me to an unhealthy dose of radiation, but the sickness I'd experienced would pass within days, while Wilson would decay within the next couple of hours. Not a single word was spoken as I watched Wilson slowly die. I just stared as he worked, listening to the shrieking creature preparing for its next attack. It was a race against time, one Wilson would lose, but in the act, we might stand a chance. 20 minutes passed, at which point Wilson's hands were visibly shaking. Our crew had shot out a few more torpedoes, but they were running out, at which point the creature would certainly attack again. Then, without speaking a word, Wilson took a step back from the reactor to observe it. He stood there for a few seconds, making sure the thing was working, before collapsing on the ground. The systems were stabilizing, a fact noticed by Henderson, who gave the order to start an emergency ascent. I wanted nothing more than to rush to Wilson's aid and drag him out of the reactor room, but even had I gotten him out, he was already a dead man. Alas, my sorrow would be interrupted by another violent shake of the submarine, undoubtedly caused by our last torpedo. Alarms sounded throughout the vessel once more, calling each crew member to their station for our ascent. Without pause, I rushed to the control room, where I found Henderson and his team scrambling to reach the surface.
We're getting the hell out of here,
He said as he saw me.
Get to your station.
In the state our vessel was in, the rapid ascent might just have killed every single crewman on board. Still, it was a risk we had to take with the monster still chasing us. With no torpedoes left, we had to rely on speed we didn't have, and pray we could outmaneuver the thing.
400 meters.
One of the men called out.
It's getting closer.
Another yelled.
300.
The hull creaked from the rapidly dropping pressure, causing my ears to pop once more.
200.
Something hit the submarine, causing another hull breach.
It's here. Keep going.
Henderson ordered. It hadn't been able to grab a hold of us, but the damage it caused with each hit was catastrophic.
100.
The rapid change in pressure wasn't only harmful to us, but it affected the creature as well. It let out a horrific, soul-shattering yell of agony. Still crashing into the submarine, it ripped another hole in the hull, causing the turbines to flood. If we didn't reach the surface immediately, we'd sink back to the abyss. Then I saw sunlight, just a few rays shining in from some of the newly formed holes in the hull. We closed off the damaged sections as best we could, hoping to remain buoyant until help could arrive. The creature let out one final shriek, but never surfaced alongside us. The damage it had sustained was too much, causing it to flee back to the depths. With the realization that we'd made it up alive, a few of us ventured up to the top side to inspect the true extent of the damage. Long holes had been torn along the sides, with massive, gray teeth left behind around the torpedo tubes. It dawned on me then that we'd been stuck in the jaw of the ancient being. It had tried to consume us, biting down on the hard metal. The torpedoes had been just enough to rip through the beast's flesh, tearing its teeth out. I do not know what attacked us on that day, nor am I planning a return to the ocean anytime in the future. Our submarine was quickly decommissioned following the attack, with false claims that it had failed its sea trials, a cover-up claiming no crew was lost that day. So, I'm here to share the story, in respect of those who were lost, and out of respect to Wilson, one of many heroes who perished at sea. Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. My old captain once told me a story about why submarines were built without windows. He would explain that the first underwater vessels were created with little glass panes, giving an insight into the darkness of the ocean depths. A world rid of light, never meant to be seen by animals wandering on land.
It's not the isolation that drives a man mad,
He'd claim.
nor is it solitude. No, what drives a man to the brink of insanity is to stare into the heart of the sea and pray that nothing stares back.
While it wasn't unusual for old men at sea to tell tall tales, my captain was on the loony end of the spectrum after one too many years spent in a metal box. That's one of the many reasons that each and every man has to endure a long and rigorous psych evaluation before setting foot on a submarine. Obviously, that was an aspect of the job my captain hailed as pointless pseudoscience. I never believed his stories, but they stuck with me. We had all been well versed in the functionality of military submarines. We knew that windows provided a weakness to the structural integrity and were hence never integrated into military-grade vessels. If I were a better man, I would have said that my captain knew that as well. As fate would have it, my captain did meet his end at sea. He'd end his own life by tying himself up in a metal chain before jumping into the ocean in the darkness of night. But the idea of men going mad at sea stayed with me, a kind of madness only understood by those living at sea. Men were never meant to venture that deep into the abyss, a fact proven by the thousands of lives ending at the bottom of the ocean. Whenever I lay awake at night to the sound of our submarine's hull settling under pressure, I'd hear my old captain's words of warning not to stare into the abyss. Because if you do end up staring into the darkness, only horrors unfold when you pretend to be the one in control. Our mission took place on the 7th of July, 2021. A skeleton crew had been stationed aboard the USS Hattle with a simple mission statement to remain underwater for 200 days without resurfacing. While the task wasn't a technological feat with modern nuclear reactors, it proved a more logistical challenge. Food supplies, mental stability during prolonged bouts without sunlight, and fresh air. How long could we stay in the depths before shattering our minds? Not many volunteered for such a mission, but the pay was great, and we weren't expected to face any real dangers during our tenure at sea. Essentially, we were paid to practice, and most of us were promised an honorable discharge following the mission's end. Alas, most of our crew would never again feel the touch of the sun upon their skin, nor let their lungs fill with fresh air. They were fated to draw their last breaths of recycled oxygen as darkness enveloped their last moments on Earth, gone and forgotten by those still on shore. I first realized something was wrong 117 days into the mission. It was subtle at first, with decreasing banter among the crew, less idle chatter. Those affected seemed to isolate themselves, rising from bed only to work, never partaking in any leisurely activities. With the change, our weekly psych evals were upped to twice a week. I figured the isolation at the ocean's depth was getting to them, but something about the situation still seemed off. No one else seemed to talk about it, but whether their silence came from fear of an early mission ending or because they didn't notice, I couldn't tell. To most, it must have felt like a game of chicken, with 50 Marines rushing towards certain insanity. None were ready to be first to admit it. After all, a bit of ocean blues was certainly worth the promised prize, which would only be granted if we completed the mission. Failure meant we'd be sent back to our original stations, places where we might even engage in active combat duty. As a man who'd already been shot twice, it was an experience I didn't long to repeat. I didn't long for my bi-weekly sessions with a department shrink either. He was a middle-aged man, clearly not built for the depths of the ocean, but he seemed to power through it. Each time we met, he'd pry into the deepest pits of my mind, looking for any flaw or break in the fabric of my thoughts.
You seem nervous.
Dr. Rikers half-stated, half-asked, as he noticed me evading his gaze.
I'm not a fan of having my thoughts analyzed, I lied.
Truth be told, I didn't much care for psychology. I had approached our initial meetings with a relatively nonchalant attitude, but something had changed in the past 2 months. The atmosphere aboard the USS Hattle was no longer the one I knew and loved. Something darker had taken over. Even our fearless captain had seemed to pull away from his official duties, only showing up when absolutely necessary.
Listen, James. You can stay cold for the next 80 days of the mission. You can try to pretend like nothing has changed. But we both know that would be a lie. I see it every day, and so do you. Now, I can't force you to talk about it, but are you really ready to look me in the face and lie about what's going on with the crew?
I looked up at him. It was the first time anybody had openly spoken about the eeriness surrounding our mission. We'd all tried so hard to deny it, fearing that the mission would end if we so much as mentioned it. And while I'd long since admitted defeat, I couldn't be the one to let down the crew. So, when someone else finally brought it up, I felt relieved.
You worry about the future of the mission, he said confidently. Well, let me explain something to you. Talking about your thoughts won't force us to resurface. But if you keep ignoring it until you have a nervous break, I will be forced to report that to high command. You are not the only one feeling it, James. But I can't help you solve the problem you choose to ignore.
He'd never been one to speak much. He rather listened, took notes, and gave small comments as insights into my thought process. But hearing him practically read my mind didn't frighten me. Instead, it made me feel calmer. Up until that point, I hadn't realized how desperately I needed to talk about what I'd seen. I couldn't hold it in any longer.
Quinn,
I mumbled, pausing as the words got stuck in my throat.
Stephen Quinn?
Are you referring to the LPO from Section 3? He asked.
I nodded.
Why don't you tell me what happened to him?
As if you don't already know, I argued.
I know, but I wasn't there. So, I'll ask again. Why don't you tell me what happened?
Unable to argue, I decided to finally cut my baggage loose and tell Rikers what had happened to the crew of Section 3.
I'd been reassigned to turbine maintenance a couple of weeks prior. 2 of the crewmen had suffered some pretty severe burns following a malfunction that to this day hasn't been explained to us. The steam would have blinded them if not for the protective gear, but it did little for their torsos. We all figured that was it, that we'd be forced to return to the surface. But the doc determined that the injuries weren't severe enough to call off the mission. But it just didn't sit right with me, you know? I've never seen such bizarre damage to any turbines. It wasn't just wear and tear. It was something more. Sabotage. I fixed the turbines alongside what remained of the crew at the section, but they weren't happy about my presence. For the entire week we spent on repairs, I don't think a single person spoke more than half a sentence to me. They looked jaded, detached from reality. It's not the first time I've seen sailors turn to autopilot, but this was something else. Still, I performed my duty to the best of my ability, but I couldn't get used to the silence. Then during the second week, I started to realize just how sick they looked. Not just pale faces and heavy eyes. They looked hollowed out, empty. I'd find them sitting on the floor for hours at a time, never speaking a word. I asked if I could help them, but they kept brushing me off. I'm honestly surprised the mission kept going, considering the state of those men. I don't know which shrink was supposed to evaluate them, but they clearly weren't fit for duty. I kept reanalyzing the turbine damage, certain of foul play. But before I could get any actual answers, I found Quinn. It was a late shift. Most of the sailors had gone to sleep, leaving only a skeleton crew to maintain the turbines. The guy sleeping in the hot rack above me was snoring like a banshee, keeping me awake. And this absolute certainty that I'd missed something just wouldn't leave my mind. So, I got up to check the turbines once more, hoping to find an entirely different rack free when I returned. It was darker than usual. Some of the lights had gone out, another problem needing to be fixed. I didn't even realize something was wrong until I slipped on something wet, falling face first to the floor. Only when I stood back up did I realize my arms were covered in blood. I thought I'd been hurt, but I quickly realized that it wasn't my blood. I followed the blood around the turbines to find 3 Marines with their throats slit and their stomachs cut open. They'd clearly been lying there for a few hours, something I could tell from the decomposing stench they emitted. Then I found Quinn sitting in a corner. His hands were covered in blood, but whether he'd been the one to inflict the damage or tried to help them, I didn't know at the time. Since he didn't exactly seem hostile towards me, I didn't think to defend myself. I just confirmed the men's deaths before tending to Quinn. As I checked him over, he started whispering to me. His words were incomprehensible at first, but he kept repeating the same phrase over and over again. "I've looked into the heart of the void. I know where it'll lead us," he said, almost rhythmically, as if he were in a trance. Quinn was taken away, distressed but unharmed. It would only be upon closer inspection that we realized Quinn had been the one to murder his friends. He had slit them open and bitten chunks out of their innards. He had become a monster. Our mission should have ended there, but by the time the next morning rolled around, the room had been cleared out, and Quinn was nowhere to be found. Most of our crew never even realized what had happened, besides noticing some of the other crew missing. But since the captain had essentially blocked off the control room to all save a few members of his elite, people figured they'd been transferred. But I knew the truth. "Why didn't you tell anyone?"
Dr. Rikers asked, breaking me free from my trance.
I wanted to, I mumbled. The XO pulled me aside after it happened, warned me not to speak openly about what I'd seen, threatened me with a reassignment once we finally resurfaced. Very vaguely, of course, but we both knew what he meant. Still, you're telling me now?
He continued asking.
Yeah, I suppose I am.
I couldn't quite explain the impulse I had to tell Rikers the truth, but my gut was ordering me to do so, as if I knew he could help us.
I'm glad you trusted me,
He said.
and you're right. Something is happening to the crew aboard this submarine. We have to convince the captain to resurface. He doesn't seem exactly interested in talking to the crew,
I said.
He's been locked in the control room with his team for the past 3 days. If he refuses to listen, there are other options.
Rikers started.
But we need...
He was cut off by a loud, metallic clank reverberating through the ship, as if the hull had suddenly caved in from the enormous pressure outside.
Did you hear that?
I asked. He nodded, not able to respond before the all-too-familiar sound of a bursting pipe echoed through the vessel. Alarms started blaring, calling all men to their posts.
Stay here,
I ordered as I jumped out of my seat and rushed in the direction of the sound. On the way, I ran into another LPO working maintenance on the torpedo tubes, a younger man by the name of Thompson. He seemed relieved to see me, practically begging me to come with him.
What the hell happened?
I asked.
I don't fucking know. I've tried reaching the navigation crew in the cockpit. We're not getting through on any comms.
He explained.
The captain is in there with them.
The burst pipe was located at the main engine in the back of the submarine. Should it suffer a significant amount of damage, we'd be at the full mercy of the ocean's vast depths. 2 other crewmen joined us by the time we reached the door to the engine room. It had been closed off, and to our luck, it was locked.
Where is everyone?
I asked, expecting at least a dozen men to aid us.
They should have been here already. Half my team has been missing for 2 days already, locked away in the fucking control room.
Thompson explained. We finally were able to pry the door open, allowing 3 feet of water to flow into the rest of the submarine. Within the engine room, we found 4 sailors just standing there, staring at the burst pipes shooting out water.
Hey, what are you doing?
Thompson asked, more confused than angry. But they didn't respond. They just stood there and stared, waiting for the room to fill up and drown them.
Move them out of the way.
I ordered as I went to work on the breach. The damage wasn't too extensive, but it couldn't be fully repaired without resurfacing. Still, we managed to stop the leak, which would at least buy us some time. As the last drop of water emerged from the busted pipe, I felt my ears pop. Only then did it dawn on me what had caused the damage, and why a group of our crew had locked themselves inside the cockpit and control room.
We're diving.
I said.
What?
Thompson asked.
They're trying to drown the sub.
I explained.
They're going to keep descending until the submarine breaks under the pressure. We have to get to the captain now. What about these guys?
He asked, gesturing to the catatonic Marines sitting on the floor.
Tie them up. They might try to hurt themselves or the ship. We can't take any risks.
Thompson and I left the 2 functional men behind to secure the catatonic Marines, making sure nothing else damaged the engine room, while we went to find a way into the cockpit.
We're gonna face resistance if we get in,
Thompson said.
Split up. Gather all the men you can. I'll do the same.
Since Rikers had mentioned a way to resurface, even without the captain, I went to collect him first. Whether he had a man inside the control room or other means to break through didn't matter. If we had a chance to escape, I'd take it. But before I could reach the doctor, I found him running in my direction, joined by 4 crewmen.
Figured we could use some help,
he said. They all looked worn down on the brink of collapse, but at least they weren't catatonic, meaning they had some usefulness left in them.
So, what's the plan?
I asked.
I've been authorized by High Command to abort the mission, given a psychological decompensation of the crew on board. Worst case scenario, if the captain won't cooperate, we'll initiate remote control of the vessel. How? I just need to make contact with the surface, but I can only do that from the control room. Let's get there then.
As we made our way towards the door, we could feel the increase in pressure. While we were kept safe from the excessive weight of the ocean outside, with each foot descended into its depth, the hull of the submarine would endure stress beyond its structural integrity. Within the next hour, we'd be crushed to death. The doors to the control room, sonar room, and cockpit had all been sealed off. Within it, they gathered maybe 20 men, including the captain himself. Thompson joined us, accompanied by the XO, who seemed equally as worried. He'd been working alongside a group of men, trying to use explosives to enter the control room. In his hands, he held a modified warhead. Its damaging capabilities had been greatly reduced, too weak to damage the hull, but enough to blow the hinges off the door.
Stay back! I'll plan it!
Thompson said.
Let's not risk our XO's life. If the captain is incapacitated, we need a new leader.
We went to another room and waited for Thompson's signal. Within a minute, he had the bomb set up, primed it, and ran back towards us. He threw himself into the room just as we closed the door, feeling the pressure of the explosion within. It was exceptionally loud, and despite the door's protection, we still felt the heat. Black smoke poured out as we opened the door, clearing quickly, but leaving behind a misty atmosphere.
Let's go!
Thompson ordered. We rushed through the smoke, barging into the control room. While we were ready for a fight, we all prayed not having to wound or kill the men that had been our friends and brothers only days prior. Something had broken their minds, but it didn't mean they couldn't be fixed. But what we met inside were not men prepared to fight, but a horrific nightmare to drive us nearer to the brink of insanity.
What in God's name have they done?
Rikers asked. Before us lay the mutilated corpses of a dozen sailors, each of them with their throats cut and various wounds to their abdomens and chests. The entirety of the floor had been painted red in blood, with chunks of guts strewn across it. We were frozen by the sight, but the creaking of the breaking hull quickly brought us back to attention. A time for morning would come, but first we had to act.
We have to get to the cockpit,
Thompson said.
I'll stick with the dock. Try to regain contact with the surface,
I said. Once again, we split up into two groups. Thompson quickly led the charge up into the cockpit alongside the XO and a handful of Marines, while the rest of us took care of the control room. But no sooner had we entered before 3 gunshots shot through the silence. Dr. Rikers fell to the ground clutching his leg, while another sailor fell dead from a gunshot wound to his head. The rest of us dove for cover, none of us having had access to the gun locker. All the while, the shots continued, shooting wildly around the room.
Rikers, are you okay?
I screamed over the hail of gunfire.
I'm not sure. There's a lot of blood.
He said in shock. Even through his clothing, I could tell they hit his femoral artery. If we didn't get him help quickly, he'd be dead in minutes. The sound of bullets was quickly replaced by the repeated clicks of an empty mag, pummeling the room into an awkward silence. With that, we stormed inside, quickly pinning the deluded man to the ground. There were 3 other Marines sitting around the room with various self-inflicted wounds. While they were in no condition to fight back, their presence sent shivers down my spine.
The void is waiting. It's time to join the abyss. Look into its eyes.
They mumbled silently. I turned back to Rikers, whose face had gone pale, sitting in a pool of his own blood. It was clear he wasn't going to make it, a fact he himself knew.
Come on, Doc. We gotta fix you up.
7-3 orange.
He mumbled in response.
Dawn. Sunrise.
What?
High command. Tell them.
He tried to say, but his voice was fading quickly.
7-3.
His voice faded for the last time, before his eyes went blank.
Hey, come on!
I yelled.
Fuck!
7-3 Orange Dawn Sunrise.
One of the men repeated.
I got it. Go check on Thompson and the XO. We'll grieve later.
I climbed into the small cockpit to find Thompson standing over our XO's dead body. He'd been stabbed in the chest, perfectly aimed between his ribs. In one of the chairs next to them sat the captain, catatonic with a stab wound to his neck. Blood was pouring down his torso, but he didn't even seem to register the pain. I tried to help him, but despite my efforts, the man would be dead within minutes.
The fuckers damaged the controls. We're stuck down here,
Thompson said.
We're initiating remote control. As long as they can get the comms up, we'll be fine. Well, they better hurry. We're approaching 1,000 meters of depth. This thing wasn't built for that kind of pressure.
We gathered the remaining crew in the control room as we awaited our fates. Each minute represented another few meters closer to the abyss of the ocean. And the closer we got, the more likely a total collapse of the submarine's hull became. Only 24 men remained. The rest either catatonic, murdered, or dead by self-inflicted wounds. Other than deal with the hull breaches, there was little we could do as the comms were repaired. Then, as I expected the pressure to finally kill us, the radio came back to life with a static noise.
This is USS Hattle. We're requesting immediate assistance. Please respond.
The radio operator yelled into the radio.
We hear you loud and clear, USS Hattle.
We're initiating remote control. Code 73 Orange Dawn Sunrise.
Copy that.
Without further questioning, the team on the surface took control of the sub. I almost fell to the ground as it halted in its dive, quickly reversing directions towards the surface. All we could do while we waited was to gather the remaining survivors and treat the wounded. But as we got closer to the surface, I didn't feel relieved to be leaving. I felt sad, homesick. I thought the feeling would vanish as I got back home, but it never did. Even after 3 months on land, I just kept longing for the darkness of the ocean depths, dreaming of its embrace. Only now do I understand what these Marines had seen and felt down in the darkness. It's not something I can explain. It's something I have to show you. Lucky for me, I'm scheduled to board another sub in just a few weeks. One filled with men ignorant to the beauty of the abyss. I am looking forward to showing them what the sea can offer.
This is UNSC Saturn. We are the last known capital-class vessel traversing these oceans. If you can hear this, you are not alone.
Lawrence spoke into the speaker for the 1,000th time. He uttered those words with such an undying sense of hope and wonder, as if there still might be other survivors remaining in the ocean.
It's currently the 19th of September, 2392. I am speaking to you from the communications center aboard this vessel. We're holding 5,000 sleeping souls, all waiting for a time we can finally resurface. If you are out there, if you are struggling, we can help. We have food, we have cryo tubes, and we have a self-sustaining biome. Please, if anyone can hear this, respond.
The last statement sounded less optimistic, and more like a cry for help. Lawrence was the last member of our crew even bothering to provide daily, custom messages with the actual date and message of hope. The rest of the crew would record a message on their first day awake, and let it play on loop as protocol dictated. But Lawrence was different. Despite spending the past century in a stasis wake cycle, he still believed other survivors existed out there in the ocean.
I admire what you do, you know,
I said, as I watched him turn the radio off.
If you admire me so much, why don't you send out a couple of these messages?
He said sarcastically.
I'm just not as outgoing as you,
I joked. We sat silently in the dark halls of the communications center. The lights were dimmed to save power, only turning on at full strength a few hours a day to mimic sunlight. Though the UNSC Saturn had the nuclear power to run uninterrupted for at least 500 years, we weren't sure that would be enough before having to refuel. And refueling meant resurfacing. A dangerous feat, to say the least.
Want to send Nemo out for a ride?
Lawrence asked.
We're not supposed to. You know what they'd do if they found out.
Nemo, or Nautical Excavation and Motility Operator, was a half-sentient, unmanned submarine used to scan our surroundings without any risk to the capital ship. It had the capabilities of diving to the deepest pits of the Mariana Trench, as well as surviving on the surface for hours at a time. Where humans were never meant to tread, Nemo could investigate, regularly checking the atmospheric quality, as well as searching for remnants of nautical life.
Who's gonna tell him? Half the crew on duty still haven't woken up from stasis.
Lawrence argued.
And the captain?
I asked.
He will check the logs. Yeah, when he's scheduled to wake up in 22 years.
He had a point. Any mistakes we made today would first be punished by the time the captain had his next shift. And after 257 years on board, Lawrence was yet to be reprimanded for the many rules he'd broken.
Fine. 2 hours.
I ordered. Lawrence's face lit up like that of a child on Christmas Eve. He regularly broke protocol to send Nemo to the surface, an event technically only scheduled to occur once per decade. Lawrence still insisted on checking the surface once per shift. We walked the narrow, long corridors towards the hangar bay, which remained empty for months at the time. Only maintenance crew dropped by a couple of times per year to run diagnostics. Its purpose was mainly to hold escape pods in case of an evacuation. Ironically enough, if we survived the sinking of Saturn, we'd die just as quickly once reaching the surface. Nemo could theoretically hold up to 2 people, yet its internal pressure resistance had yet to be tested. Not to mention the fact that it had no means of keeping us safe from the dangers on the surface.
All right, buddy. Let's get you back into the waters.
Lawrence told the drone as if it were his pet.
Make me proud.
We lowered it gently into the pool, allowing it to navigate its way outside alone. Once there, it rapidly started ascending from 10,000 feet below to the surface, a journey that would take no more than 20 minutes.
I don't get it, Lawrence. Why do you always insist on checking the world above? Doesn't it hurt?
What do you mean?
I mean, it's a constant reminder of what we lost. Why do you constantly keep reminding yourself?
I asked.
I don't remind myself of what we lost. I just remind myself of what we're fighting to get back.
He explained. Nemo sent a live feed from its cameras, displaying little more than darkness in the abyss below. Even if we turned its powerful lights on, we'd be met with little more than a lifeless abyss. Only once it breached 3,000 feet might we get lucky enough to see light from the surface. I looked around the hangar, wondering if the escape pods would be able to hold all 5,000 souls within Saturn. Lawrence, on the other hand, was fixated on the screen, showing nothing more than darkness. I knew he was looking for signs of marine life, but we all knew there was none to be found. Lawrence just hadn't accepted that fact yet. Before long, Nemo had caught the first rays of broken sunshine, penetrating the shallow parts of the ocean, and as always, a look of wonder appeared on his face. Yet, all we could see during the ascent were bubbles and refracted light. Then it breached the surface, wobbling in the ocean before finally producing a clear picture. I didn't care to look, yet I felt obliged to do so. We were 100 nautical miles from the coast, meaning we were left with little more than murky waters around us. The sky above was pitch black, and the sun shined brightly. Without an atmosphere, there was nothing left to refract the light, leaving us absent the brilliance of a blue sky.
See? Nothing.
I let out with a sigh.
The world is dead.
Let Nemo do his job,
Lawrence interjected. The vessel would make readings of the atmosphere and measure the radiation levels coming from the sun. Once the numbers started coming in, Lawrence let out a chuckle.
Would you look at that?
He said.
Oxygen levels are rising. Carbon dioxide levels are dropping.
His last statement caught my attention. For the past 2 centuries, not once had our vessels detected a change in oxygen levels. It wouldn't just spontaneously produce itself, which meant a living organism had survived the extinction event.
Check the numbers again,
I demanded.
It's not a glitch. We've got oxygen.
He was right. The oxygen levels had risen by 0.1%, which wasn't anywhere near enough to sustain human life, but it was a start. We practically jumped from our seats, embracing each other in joy and shock from our discovery.
I told you!
Lawrence insisted. His undying high spirits had just been confirmed, which would turn him into an insufferable optimist. But I couldn't help but smile. It was a day to celebrate. If only the rest of the crew had been awake to share in the good news.
All right, bring Nemo back down.
This time, Lawrence was more than happy to oblige. As the drone made its descent, we couldn't help but ramble about what could have possibly produced such vast amounts of oxygen. But our celebrations were cut short as Nemo once again reached the depths of the midnight zone and turned on its lights.
Did you just do that?
I asked. Lawrence shook his head. Nemo had some autonomy over its own decisions, but turning on the light was one decision that could only be made in the presence of movement in the depths. Short of debris sinking towards the abyss, we'd not once detected any sort of movement. Yet there it was. We glued our eyes to the screen, looking for any sign of movement.
What is that?
I asked, as I noticed tiny dots lighting up in the distance. The drone moved closer to the movement. One dot turned to 2, then 3. Before long, 1,000 blue lights lit up all around it. At first, they appeared as long seaweed-covered and illuminating blisters. But once we got closer, we noticed limbs, legs, eyes, and teeth. There were bulges within the plants holding humanoid shapes, and the more we inspected the extremities, the more we realized that they were human parts. Shock put me on autopilot. I got up and picked up a radio.
What are you doing?
Lawrence asked.
I'm alerting a crisis team.
I explained.
No, wait! We need to bring one of them down to us with the drone. It could change everything. Are you insane? Bringing organic matter on board without alerting a senior officer? I am calling the team.
Each crisis team was manned by an executive officer, 2 section chiefs with 5 LPOs each. They were resting in specialized, albeit risky cryopods, able to wake and respond within an hour. I typed in the code, which caused a soft alarm to echo throughout the hangar bay.
We'll bring them on board, only when we've alerted the XO. Fine,
Lawrence said, clearly disappointed. We spent the next hour just staring at the bizarre beings. We counted 2 to 5 humanoid shapes within each plant, all seemingly asleep. I couldn't decide whether they were a strange step in evolution or if the plants had consumed the corpses of dead sailors. But before we had time to contemplate, a team of armed men, accompanied by the executive officer, Ramirez, rushed into the hangar. Once the area had been secured, the XO approached us with a stern look on his face.
You mind telling me why the hell you brought us out of stasis?
He asked.
We found something,
Lawrence just said as he gestured towards the screen.
You sent out the drone outside of a scheduled mission?
Ramirez asked, his eyes filling with rage.
You can court-martial me later. Look at the screen.
As soon as he laid eyes upon the grotesque sight, his look turned to one of shock, then confusion, and finally fear.
Is that what I think it is?
He asked. We could only nod in agreement. It wasn't something we could explain, nor could we state with absolute certainty that it was a positive discovery. Something about the creatures felt off, as if the best course of action would be to turn around and never question what we'd seen. But protocol was clear. Any evidence of biological life must be explored by a senior officer.
Cut 2 of them down. Bring them inside. Contained,
Ramirez ordered. While the orders worried me, Lawrence seemed ecstatic. He set to work, allowing Nemo to detach 2 of the humanoids, storing them within its own body. Once safely contained, the drone continued its descent, quickly reaching the hangar. Once inside, a group of men in hazmat suits approached the drone for extraction, carefully moving the organic matter into a sealed transport capsule. From there, we were heading straight for the laboratories. We remained in the observational area behind protective glass as the biologists went to work on the discovery. One of the humanoids would be dissected immediately, while the other would be frozen for safekeeping. Dr. Liebgott would lead the autopsy, a man old enough to remember life on a living planet. His experience in marine biology stood unmatched. He swiftly went to work without asking too many questions. He seemed just as excited as Lawrence as he cut through the seaweed-like skin, revealing green, hard muscle fibers below. While it looked human, it had been integrated into the plant, only Once he'd cut open what we presumed to be the chest cavity, did he stop to admire the creature?
Bizarre.
He mumbled.
No lungs, no heart. It's just filled with the same fibers it has on the outside. Keep going.
Ramirez insisted. Before Liebgott could cut any deeper, the body twitched ever so slightly.
Did you see that?
Liebgott asked. Then one of the eyes of the humanoid shot open, darting around the room in a panic.
It's alive.
Lawrence mumbled, almost gleefully.
We better.
Liebgott tried to get out, but before he had the chance to react, the body started squirming violently around. Some of the cut fibers shot up like tendrils, wrapping themselves around Liebgott's arm. His assistants tried to help him, but ended up entangled in the mess themselves. They screamed as the tendons snapped their arms and legs, pulling hard enough to tear through veins and arteries. The entire autopsy team had gotten entangled in the mess, their blood mixing with the fibers, which appeared to feed on the broken flesh. But rather than helping the dying scientists, Ramirez ordered his team to seal off the lab.
Put the section on lockdown. Alert the team dealing with the second subject. We need to get rid of it.
Without questioning orders, the LPOs locked the laboratory down. I would have been upset, if not for the fact that the entire autopsy team had been killed by the time Ramirez even had the chance to finish uttering his orders. But even with the labs secured, there was a second monstrosity about to be stored.
I can't get a hold of them,
one of the sailors said.
Then get to their position and assist them, and maintain radio contact,
Ramirez said firmly. The creature inside the lab had grown to 3 times its size, with tendrils of green fibers stretching up the walls, prying at the ventilation shafts. Though they were a dead end, it proved that the creature had some sort of intelligence, enough to seek out an escape route. We decided to sterilize the lab with gamma radiation, killing any biological life forms inside. But before we'd get the chance to initiate the protocol, the radio sounded. The LPO sent to investigate the second team called back in a panic.
It killed them.
He let out in a shock.
It ripped them apart. I don't know where it went. I need...
A short yelp, followed by silence. Another man killed by whatever we'd willingly brought on board.
Lawrence, sterilize the room. Kill that thing. It might be trapped now, but it's only a matter of time before it figures a way to get out.
Ramirez said.
The rest of you, follow me. We're taking this son of a bitch out.
I grabbed a rifle and followed his lead, not even sure if ballistic weapons could take the creature out. We did have more powerful weapons stored, but using anything stronger than primitive ballistic weapons might damage the hull. Hence, they were forbidden. We rushed towards the last known location of the dead LPO. The team responsible for bringing the creature to the biological holding facility never made it there. A fact easily proven as we came across pools of blood. The creature, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. We'd locked down the section, which meant it couldn't have accessed any larger section of the ship.
Track any movement within the sector,
Ramirez said. Each sector was equipped with a security station, from which we could measure any movement and lock down individual rooms or halls. Once there, I sat down to check for any signs of life. But apart from us, and Lawrence still at the laboratories, the section was clear.
Where the hell is it?
Ramirez asked. An alarm sounded with a critical warning message popping up on our screen.
Warning, cryopod failure. All technicians report to the cryo bay immediately.
It hit me then that we'd locked down the sector too late. The creature had already made its way deeper into the ship by the time we'd sealed everything off. It had reached the cryo bay, which meant it had thousands of victims to feast on.
Oh God, we're too late,
was all I could utter.
We need to go to the armory. We need better weapons,
Ramirez said.
And sink the sub?
I interjected.
Either we kill that thing with any means necessary, or we lose every single person on board this vessel. We are beyond protocol, and that is an order.
He was right. We either died being consumed by that monstrosity, or risked drowning ourselves. But only one of these options gave us a sliver of hope. I decided to call Lawrence to give him a heads up.
Lawrence, can you hear me?
I asked over the radio.
I'm sorry.
He mumbled back.
What do you mean? What's going on?
I couldn't kill it. I just couldn't. It got out.
In the background, I could hear the distinct sound of flesh being torn apart.
Lawrence, are you hurt?
He got me.
He said, his voice getting weaker with each uttered word.
No, come on, fight back!
I yelled back. Silence. Lawrence was dead. A fact I didn't need to confirm. But if that thing had escaped the lab, we had no direct path to the armory. I rushed to alert Ramirez, but by the time I reached him, I heard gunshots echo through the halls.
There it is!
One of the sailors yelled. The bullets shredded through the aquatic flesh, but did little to slow the creature down. It jumped from marine to marine, cutting them down with little effort. Someone called for a retreat, but in the chaos, I couldn't figure out who it was. I kept firing as I ran for my life, leaving the fallen to fend for themselves. Ramirez took up a defensive position outside the communication station, covering for me as I ran inside. As he tried to enter himself, the creature grabbed onto him. I took his hands and tried to pull him free, but the creature swiftly gutted him.
Let me go. Save yourself.
He coughed up as his lungs filled with blood. He shoved himself free, grabbing onto a pistol, firing off a few rounds as he was dragged away. I sealed the door, knowing it would slow it down at best. Only when I dared to slow down did I realize a large chunk of my leg was missing. I was bleeding out, slowly but certainly. Like the rest of the crew, I would be dead within the hour.
So here I am, trapped in the darkness of the communication station, sending out a custom message like Lawrence always did. Unfortunately, this message is not one of hope and salvation. You will find no sanctuary here, no safety, no chance for survival. No, this is a warning to stay away. If you detect the UNSC Saturn in the depths of the ocean, don't try to help us. Don't scavenge for supplies. If you see us, turn around and leave. Don't let the infestation spread. This will be my last transmission. Current date is 20th of September, 2392. May God have mercy on you all.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.
Dr. Nicely.
The old house was dark and quiet when I pulled up out front. The glowing red Luigi's Pizza sign on top of my car was the only light in the area, aside from a few flickering blue street lamps, mingling to cast the road in an eerie flashing crimson and purple glow. This section of town was ancient, full of century-old houses, and this place was no exception. It looked like it had been built before World War II, with shutters on the windows and a porch with broad columns out front. I pulled over to the side of the road, parking up against the curb, rather than using the driveway. My box car leaked oil, and I'd gotten in trouble once after leaving a small black puddle of crude in some rich guy's parking space. Whoever lived in this place looked wealthy, and I didn't want to piss them off. When you're a delivery driver like me, you'll do anything to improve your chances of a proper tip. Some nights those are few and far between. When I rang the doorbell, a voice answered through the intercom, sounding like an elderly British gentleman.
Hello?
The voice said. Hey, Luigi's Pizza. I've got your pie. No sauce, half beef.
Oh, perfect.
The man replied.
I'm not able to come down right now. I live on the second floor. Would you be able to bring it up to my apartment? I would really appreciate it.
Sure, I said, smiling a little. Appreciated was code for money in my line of work. There was a buzzing noise like you'd hear at any apartment door when someone let you in, and I turned the knob to go inside. Stairs greeted me immediately, leading straight up. There was no door to access the first floor, which I found a little odd. Unpainted drywall surrounded me, which appeared new, and I could smell fresh sawdust, as if there had been recent construction here. I climbed the stairs, and when I reached the top, I found a hallway leading towards a single white door. Goosebumps ran up my spine as I looked at that door and saw it was open just a crack, but it was dark inside. With a brief, worried pause, I pushed the door open and stepped inside.
Hello?
I called out, expecting the old man to flick on a light, and be standing there in front of me, waiting for me in the darkness, waiting for a meal. But instead, there was nothing but silence. Maybe this was the wrong apartment, I thought to myself. But there had been no other doors except for this one, unless I had missed it. I prepared to leave when the door slammed shut behind me, so fast and so hard that it sent a huge gust of wind through the room, rustling unseen papers and making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. My heart was a pounding drum in my chest as I spun around and tried to feel for the door handle, but there was nothing to be found. Only a perfectly smooth wall and nothing else. A spider fell down from the ceiling and crawled down my shirt collar, and then another, and another, as I brushed them off with trembling hands. I felt their fat bodies squirming away from my fingers and skittering across my scalp. I began to scream for help, dropping the pizza on the floor and desperately searching for the walls for a light switch in the darkness, groping my hands over the walls as I hyperventilated, yelling and begging for someone to let me out of this place, but ow! It felt like something had cut my hand. A razor blade? A jagged piece of glass jutting out of the wall? Whatever it was, it had been sharp enough to break skin, and it had cut me deep. Warm blood trickled down my arm, and I began to whimper from the pain, imagining the gash going to the bone with no way to see it to reassure myself otherwise. Spiders continued to rain down on me from above, as if the ceiling were a storm raining arachnids. Terror came over me in a wave as I realized that this was no accident. Someone had lured me up here intentionally, and they wanted to torture me. My throat felt tight, and my knees buckled as I shrank to the floor, clutching my knees to my chest.
Having fun yet?
A voice asked from the walls. The same kind, elderly British man who had greeted me at the door was speaking from all around me. I screamed something unintelligible, begging him to let me out. He answered with a cackling bout of laughter, which devolved into a hacking cough.
All my life I wanted to do this, but I was always worried about getting caught,
he said, his voice giddy and giggling.
But since my diagnosis, lung cancer, stage 4, I don't have to worry about prison anymore. I've only got a few more months to live, they tell me. And now I can do all the things I've always dreamed of. No more unfulfilled plans and lost wishes. What's the point of money anyways? You can't take it with you after all. Best to spend it on the things you enjoy, the things that make you happy.
That was when I realized this man was truly insane. A psychopath who got his entertainment from other people's suffering and pain. Why else would he trap me in a room sabotaged with razor blades and raining giant spiders? I got up and pressed deeper into the room, unsure how I was going to get out, but knowing I couldn't go back the way I'd entered. The door behind me was gone, and the walls were covered with sharp objects meant to injure me if I went searching for a way out. I heard the sound of spinning electric saws turning on, their whirring blades sending sparks flying. I made the mistake of reaching out to check for a wall and got hit by a spinning blade. The only option was to go forward, it seemed.
You're insane,
I muttered, ripping my t-shirt into strips and wrapping my hands with the fabric.
What kind of person enjoys doing this to another human being? Just let me out of here. My boss will figure out I'm missing soon. They'll send the cops for me. You want to spend your last days in jail?
The man began to laugh again, until it turned into that horrible, hacking cough. I heard him spit up a gob of something which was likely blood, before speaking again.
Don't worry about me. If that happens to me, you should be glad. I see you're pressing forward, young man. Good. Very good. Be careful, though. I have more surprises for you.
With my next step, I felt the floor give way, dropping out from underneath me. I plunged down sickeningly into darkness, my stomach lurching upwards and trailing after me a moment later, threatening to eject the contents from inside. And then I was falling, hurtling downwards into darkness so deep I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I hit the cement floor hard enough to rattle my teeth in their sockets, spiking my tailbone and sending a lightning bolt of pain up my spine. It was dark in this new place, musty and wet like a basement. Things were scurrying around nearby, making rustling, nibbling noises like rats and mice. Before I could open my mouth to scream for help, I heard someone else do just that.
Please! Let me out of here, you maniac! I have a family!
Hello? I began to say, but another voice cut me off.
Help! Help! Help!
It was a woman, and she repeated the word over and over again, not stopping for several minutes. It sounded as if she had gone completely mad.
I just got here.
I managed to say when she was done.
How long have you all been down here for?
Several dozen voices began to answer, their responses horrifying me. They were all behind walls, as if this were a dungeon or a maze, a dark labyrinth of horrors.
A month,
Said one trembling old man's voice.
A week.
Said the small, timid voice of a young girl. And then finally, a woman spoke, the one who had been yelling help over and over again.
I'm his wife.
She said, then broke into a titter of insane laughter.
I've been down here for 3 years, and you're all gonna die down here.
Eagleside is a rough part of the city. There's enough street crime to make most people think twice about moving here. And few venture out from their houses at night, opting to stay inside after sundown. As a delivery driver, I don't get those luxuries. I'm out here all hours of the day and night, dropping off beer, liquor, pizza, cigarettes, you name it, to the citizens of Eagleside, good and bad alike. I've got my own company. I call it Bud's Brews, on account of the fact that my name is Bud, and beer just happens to be my #1 seller. I've got cases of it in my garage, so that after hours I can still hook people up. You can call me at 4:30 a.m. and I'll come by and keep your party going. It might not be your favorite brand, and I'll charge you double for the privilege, but most people don't give a damn by that point. Some people will pay anything to keep the party going, even if it's just a one-man show and there ain't no music playing. Saturday night had come and gone, but I was still out on the streets as usual, rocking the tunes in my Trans Am and lugging 6 cases in the back seat. I could fit a hell of a lot more in there if I bought a minivan, or even a sedan for that matter. But what do I look like to you? A soccer mom? Ain't no way in hell you'll see me driving a Dodge Caravan or a Camry. I'll blaze around town in muscle cars until the day I die. And the price of gas while you're at it. Where was I? Oh yeah. So, it was the early morning hours of Sunday by that point, when I got called to deliver a case to some sorry sack on the north end of Eagleside. I'd been there before, and knew the way by heart. The guy asked for Bud Light, but I had Coors with me, so I told him I was all out, and he'd have to take what he could get. He spit into the phone but told me that'd be fine, and off I went towards the bastard's house. By the time I got there, he was already waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs, pacing back and forth from one foot to the other like he had to take a leak. Which reminded me, that was something I needed to do once in a while as well.
Mind if I use your washroom?
I asked as he took the case from me. He hooked his thumb towards the front door, and I followed after him. Then went in and relieved myself, feeling much better afterwards. I drove away back towards the middle of Eagleside, to my usual place outside the McDonald's. That was always the best bet, since people ordered from there all night long, and it was close to everything else as well. It didn't take long to get another call, despite the time of night, now well past 3 a.m. Another party in North Eagleside, a one-man party once again. I put the car in gear and drove through green lights one after another. It was like tonight was destined to be my night, not a single red. And this next customer was a big tipper. I knew he'd be good for a 10, maybe even a 20. Flashing lights up ahead made me step on the brakes suddenly, and I realized it was a hastily constructed roadblock set up by the police. Flares were burning steadily and had been placed along the road to funnel traffic in towards 2 cop cars. Rain was just beginning to fall, and I noticed with some surprise that the 2 officers were already wearing yellow rain slickers, as if they had been expecting the weather at exactly that moment. As if they had called it forth themselves with some dark, terrible magic. I never did like cops very much. I guess it's a bit of a personality defect. The sound of rain pattering softly outside could be heard as I rolled down my window. The cop tried to poke his flashlight into my car, aiming it at the cases of beer in the back. But the window wasn't rolled down far enough to allow for that. I knew the law, and I knew better than to allow them any access to my workspace.
Hey, bud,
He said, leaning down to sniff through the inch-wide window crack. The tip of his nose actually squeezed through the gap, and for a moment, I considered rolling it up. I imagined that mental image and almost burst out laughing, barely restraining myself.
busy night?
He asked.
No,
I lied.
it's been slow. Oh yeah? So you haven't been up to the North End tonight?
I shook my head.
Because the reason we're out here is there's been a murder. Man had a fresh case of beer, too. And he didn't look like the type to have a fresh case this time of night. Only a single bottle was open, too.
This really shook me to my core. My last customer? Was that who they were talking about? Was this for real?
You guys are messing with me. What is this? Are you doing a sobriety check here or something?
This is real, he said, looking serious. You can go on your way now. It's a free country. But be careful. There's a killer roaming Eagleside right now. And I think you might have just missed him. Next time, you might not be so lucky. His partner leaned down on the other side to look at me through the glass of the passenger window, as if taking me in.
Move along now,
he said. I began to drive, my hands trembling with fear, unsure if the two cops were messing with me. For years, I had skirted the laws around town. Secondhand sale of liquor without a license isn't exactly legal, after all. Not to mention, I didn't usually ID people or bother with any of that nonsense. My next stop was the rich guy's house. At least, rich by Eagleside standards. He tipped me a $10 bill for my trouble, and I left with a grin on my face. It wasn't 2 minutes later before I got another call. This one from a less generous tipper. At least he lived nearby, though, and I had exactly what he wanted. I was over there in 10 minutes and made another $5 for the delivery. The son of a didn't tip a red dime, but that was to be expected. So I asked to use his washroom and pissed all over his floor, leaving the seat up for his wife the next morning to fall in. By the time I got back to McDonald's, it was 4:30 a.m., and I was just about ready to call it a night. Not many customers bothered to keep drinking after that point, and I wasn't about to pull a double and start working an intermittent breakfast shift. Those were always hit or miss. Red lights lit up behind me, and I saw it was the police. The same two cops as before came knocking on my window, looking at me with worried faces.
Yeah?
I asked, feeling my eyelids drooping. Are you all right? The cop asked, sounding nervous.
Yeah. Why?
I asked. It turned out there had been another killing, just after I left my previous customer, according to the cops. Given the circumstances, they needed to take me in for questioning. I agreed, since I had no choice, and went along willingly. I couldn't believe my ears. If not for my luck, I would have lost my life. My legs felt numb as I walked out of the interrogation room. Be careful, the police detective said, waving goodbye. There's still a killer out there. Stay safe, okay? I told him I would. And then just as I stepped outside, I got another call. Bob Vanders, from the west end of Eagleside. He wanted an Egg McMuffin and a coffee, and he was a terrible tipper. I remembered that much. I told him I'd be happy to, and I picked up his order. Tipping the vial of black poison into his coffee, I thought again about how much better my life was going to get once all the terrible customers were gone and only the good ones were left. It would take a while, that was true, but it would be worth it. And until then, I'd just have to work twice as hard. I didn't want to be a delivery man. Nobody chooses this life for themselves. Nobody grows up with the dream planted in their mind that they want to be the world's fastest pizza guy one day. Driving around in a beat-up jalopy with the smell of pepperoni in your nose. You know what sucks the most about it? You know that smell of delicious, fresh-baked pizza that makes your mouth water when you get a pie delivered? When you're a delivery guy, you just get to sit in that smell all day. And then you don't get to eat the pizza. You just get to smell it and let your mouth fill with saliva. thinking about how you wish you made more money so you could afford to buy an extra large with all the toppings, garlic bread crust, and a side of hot wings with blue cheese dipping sauce for good measure. That's where I was at mentally as I sat in my shitty car, my battery slowly dying as I listened to the radio and enjoyed the last little bit of light afforded by the headlamps. Tow truck's gonna be here soon, I kept telling myself, smelling the pizza in the back seat. Any minute, the tow truck is gonna be here. I rolled down the window and stuck my head out, craning my neck to see into the distance behind me. The smell of the fresh, autumn night air filled my nostrils and replaced the cheese and hot-baked dough and tomato sauce. At first, I thought there was a pair of headlights, but then whatever it was blinked out of existence and disappeared, like the glowing eyes of some great cat. I rolled up the window quickly, shivering from the cold draft as it filled the car. The address was supposed to be right here. I had actually been idling while I checked the directions on my phone. The GPS confirmed that I was where I was supposed to be, but there was no driveway, just untouched forest surrounding the road as far as the eye could see. Somehow, I had run out of gas, despite my tank being half full. When I checked the time, it was as if I had been daydreaming for hours, like I had been in a trance while looking for the address on my phone. The sun had gone down at some point, and it was well past 11 at night, the moon overhead glowing an eerie pumpkin orange. That was when I had called the tow truck, but it seemed as if they weren't coming. Confused and bewildered, I got out of the car and looked around, wondering if they had gotten lost. I pulled my phone out and hit the redial button for the towing company. But this time, all I got was static, as if whoever had picked up the phone was in a different dimension, separated from me by a wall of entropy. The brush on the other side of the road suddenly began to rustle and sway, as if something were moving behind it, trying to stay hidden but too large to manage that successfully.
Hello?
I called out, hearing the quiver in my own voice and wishing I sounded braver, wishing I were braver.
Who's there?
Another sound came from behind me, and I spun around to get back in the car, terrified of whatever was stalking me so far out in the middle of this night black forest. But the car door slammed shut as I bumped into it with my wide hips. Too many hours of sitting and not enough sit-ups. Too many undeliverable pizzas eaten in parking lots for half price. Too many years of not taking care of myself taunted me as I grabbed the door handle and tried to pull it open, but found it locked. The keys still inside, jammed into the ignition slot, mocking me. The rustling sound came again, and this time it was from behind another tree, and another. Movements were heard on all sides as my eyes darted back and forth from place to place, seeing huge, hulking shadows hiding behind the trees all around.
Who's there?
I nearly shrieked, my voice high and breaking.
Stay back! I've got a gun!
I didn't have anything of the sort, but it was the only thing which came to mind that could potentially ward off threats of such size and terrifying proportions. A shadow began to emerge from behind one of the trees, and another came from behind me. I heard their huge, lumbering footsteps coming closer, as their features became discernible in the waning light of the moon. Their faces were obscured by the shadows of tree limbs and broken boughs above us, the half-bare branches shedding leaves like dead tissue, falling all around. The warmth of one creature's hot breath was in my face as I stood, petrified, nowhere to run. My back was pressed up against the cold steel of the car, the window glass squeaking against my skin as I trembled with fear. Sharp, long, hooked and pointed teeth grated together as gray lips pulled back into a grin. A mouth as wide as a windshield opened up as if to devour me, its pointed tongue salivating and dripping. And then it surprised me by speaking, its voice a rumbling baritone, deep enough to shake my teeth in their sockets.
Are you from Domino's?
It asked, spraying me with fine droplets of spittle. The acid burn of them sizzled on my cheeks.
I ordered 8 large pizzas to this address.
My hand was shaking badly as I hooked a thumb towards the back seat.
In there.
I managed to stutter.
Locked. By mistake.
There was a heavy, deep-sounding sigh, as the creature was clearly annoyed by my amateur actions. But instead of eating me as an alternative, he smashed the window with his claw and reached inside, removing the boxes.
A bit cold.
The thing said, sounding irritated.
You look to be warm-blooded, though. Your blood might make for an interesting marinara.
A screeching roar came from the woods, and the creature huffed and let out a sigh.
Yes, Mother. I suppose we should leave him alive. Otherwise, who will deliver way out here?
He began to stalk back into the darkness of the forest, leaving me behind in my soiled and warm, wet pants.
It is so hard to find good help these days. You really must bring back that 30-minute guarantee. We used to get so much free pizza in this dimension.
What dimension?
I called after the thing, looking around with confusion at the forest of trees whose branches now whipped and coiled like angry snakes. How the hell was I going to get home? I looked down and saw a $50 bill was laying at my feet, with the head of a monster in place of President Grant. Shit, not again. At least these guys tipped better than the last place, though. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.